Chapter 71. Long Do had always had a love-hate relationship with this Krypton shopping mall that didn't have a nice name but was very practical. He loves it because there are always a lot of very useful items in it, and he hates it because these things are too expensive. He can't afford many of them at all. He can only look at them and drool. However, at this moment, the Krypton shopping mall, which originally only had an item classification column, suddenly had a second classification. It actually had the words skill classification written on it. Skill classification, that is to say, he can buy things related to skills in it. Raito excitedly opened the skill classification column, and then he saw a lot of various skill books. Skill book, after purchasing, you can learn the skill. Repeated purchases can increase skill proficiency. After casually opening a skill book named Sao's Postpartum Care, Raito looked at the description below and suddenly nodded. What the hell is this skill? The description of the skill book was very simple and easy to understand. You can learn this skill after buying the first book, and continuing to buy the same type of skill book can quickly increase proficiency. It's just that the number and types of skill books in this skill classification column are really too many. At a glance, there was a dazzling array of skills, making one feel as if they had come to a museum of human skills. What are the ordinary skills? Ancient Bajikan, Ancient Siamese Muay Thai, Ancient Ryukyu Tang Hand, Rapid Gun Shooting, Lock-Picking, Silent Movement, etc. What were the arts and art skills? Rogues Don't Die by Bare Hands, Weapon Master, Essence of Forthright Throwing, Parkour Master, Iron Bone Mastery, Bronze Skin Mastery, etc. What were the stupid skills? Guide to Soap in Prison, Soul Singer's Raw, Lanju Ramen Beef Thinly Sliced Method, One-Hit Kill Against Aliens, Golden Retriever's Hair Care, etc. What the hell? These skills were too creative. How in the world did they come up with them? After carefully reading the description of these skills, the dragon head really felt like he was watching a funny program. For example, the one-hit killing technique specifically for extraterrestrials was priced at $1 trillion. After learning it, one could kill any extraterrestrials that had descended to Earth with one hit. If this world were to be invaded by aliens in the future, Raito might be able to use this ability to save the world. The problem was that there were no aliens. After choosing for a while, Raito realized that there were some skills that were more realistic. Of course, their prices were also more realistic. For example, the Hooligan Does Not Die by Bare Hands, which was sold for 3 million yuan, was a super practical skill that could turn anything in one's hand into a fighting tool when one did not have a weapon. From small stones on the side of the road to large tables and chairs, pots and pans, everything that could be used as a weapon. After mastering it, it could be said that this was the pinnacle of environmental warfare. There was also mastery of iron bones and mastery of copper skin. Although they were sold for 1 million each, they could greatly increase one's resistance. Other than these passive skills, the various active skills of the martial arts were also quite attractive. For example, Ancient Siamese Muay Thai, this fist technique was originally used to kill people on the battlefield. After slowly improving and reducing its lethality, it became the current fighting technique. In theory, the original version had long been lost. Similarly, there were Ancient Ryukyu Tang Hand, Ancient Bajikan and so on. Many of the martial arts here were the original forms that had long been lost. In terms of lethality, they were several levels stronger than the ones that were passed down. Because the Furumaki-style martial arts that he had just learned did not seem to have any active offensive moves, Raito also needed to choose a strong offensive martial art to supplement this. But at the same time, he also needed to buy some passive skills to strengthen his basic abilities. In short, there were many things that he wanted to buy, but he was so poor that he could not be at ease and buy boldly. Phew. In the end, he still needed to earn money. After taking the car back to the Rulon Group headquarters, Raito laid on the bed and looked at the ceiling. His heart was filled with all kinds of money symbols floating around. After the last revival, Raito's little treasury was only left with about 6 million. This amount of money was not too little, and could also be used to buy some good things from the market. But Raito did not dare to spend it carelessly. After all, his money was closely related to his life. If it was not for the fact that he had no other choice, he would not dare to spend the money to the limit. Otherwise, if he died, then wouldn't it be completely over? In short, tomorrow he should go to school first. He had to find Jiao Yuan and pull him into his group to see if there was any way to earn a lot of money in a short period of time. Although Raito knew that most of the ways to earn money were written in the criminal law, he still hoped that Jiao Yuan, the business genius, could help him. Chem. Right, it seemed that other than Jiao Yuan who could help him in this area, there were also the two young ladies, right? At this moment, the figures of two beautiful women suddenly appeared in Raito's mind. Kanzaki-colored glaze and Tsukujiri Yunyang. These two young ladies had a certain level of friendship with Raito, and they were both of noble status. Why not ask them about earning money? If this was 2 days ago, Raito would have said something like a real man does not live off a woman to put on an act. But now that he had unknowingly fallen into the abyss of spending money, his skin seemed to have become much thicker, and he no longer cared about living off a woman. Beep 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 beep. And so, 1 minute later, Kanzaki-colored glaze, who was sitting at her desk and writing calligraphy, received this message. Young lady, I urgently need money right now. Do you have any way to help me? Dog's head, by Raito Kiripf. What the hell was a dog's head? For a moment, colored glaze couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. The figure of the guy who had skipped class for the entire day appeared in her mind. If it weren't for the fact that she saw the dog's head at the end, colored glaze would have thought that he had gotten himself into some serious trouble. But now it seemed that it wasn't so serious. He was just being a talker. And so, colored glaze put down her writing brush, and her slender fingers swiftly flew over her cell phone's keyboard. Beep 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 beep. About 10 seconds later, colored glaze's reply came. Go rob a bank. When the time comes, I'll write an anonymous letter to the nesting duck prison to encourage you and cheer for you from the shadows. What the hell? It's one thing to write a letter to me, but it's an anonymous letter. Even if you want to cheer for me, you should do it somewhere I can see you. Isn't this too much? Just as Raito was sighing at how heartless colored glaze was, Yunyan's reply came. Chapter 72. Compared to colored glaze, who was born in a corrupt bureaucratic family and had seen through the darkness of the world, Yunyan's attitude was much better. My parents don't want me to be tainted with bad habits, so they've always been strict with money. I really can't help you in this area, I'm very sorry. Well said, that's what a person should say. Through this simple sentence, Raito seemed to see Yunyan's apologetic expression on the other side of the phone. As expected of Yunyang from Tsuki Tsuki. She's beautiful, speaks well, and her attitude is so gentle. She's much better than a certain dark lady, HMPH. After secretly mocking colored glaze, Raito felt that it wasn't enough, so he continued to send messages to mock her. You're a lady, and you're a lady. You're such a failure as a lady. What do you mean? Is he comparing me to someone? He knows other ladies. HMPH. Colored glaze slightly pouted when she received this message, and her face showed obvious displeasure. So she continued to type mercilessly, trying to fight back across dimensions. But perhaps because colored glaze was too focused on texting, she didn't notice a familiar figure slowly approaching from behind. Lady, who are you texting? What? After being shocked by the dancing costume that suddenly appeared behind her, colored glaze's finger slipped and accidentally typed a word. Then she hurriedly sent it out. Originally, Lioli was going to reply, then go and find the young mistress you like. Don't ask me. But the last few words changed from don't ask me to don't kiss me. When Raito saw colored glaze's reply, he was dumbfounded. Then go find the lady you like, don't kiss me. This means that if I don't find another lady, I can kiss her. Is colored glaze this open-minded? No. I'm a gentleman. How can I be like this when we've only known each other for a few days? We have to start from holding hands, kiss after 3 days, and do it after 6 days. After taking a deep breath, Raito decided to clearly express his honest attitude to colored glaze, so that she wouldn't misunderstand that he was an indecent person who could offer his body at any time. Colored glaze, on the other hand, didn't realize that there was a problem with the message she sent out, and was still arguing with dancing costume. Dancing costume, just a greeting from a friend, nothing special. For some strange reason, Colored Glaze obviously didn't want Dancing Costume to know that she was communicating with Raito, so she put her phone behind her and made up a reasonable excuse. Friend. Do any of your friends know your phone number? Dancing Costume immediately frowned. She knew that there were no more than 5 people who had the lady's phone number, and she knew all of them. After all, the lady's personal information was strictly controlled. It was impossible for ordinary people to know Colored Glaze's phone number, and Raito's phone number was secretly given to him by Colored Glaze. Suddenly, a drop of cold sweat fell from Colored Glaze's smooth forehead, and she quickly remedied, "It's a relative from the royal family. The girl you saw last time when you went back to your hometown, do you still remember? The eldest daughter of the emperor? Princess Feuderheim? Yes, that's her. But when you came back, didn't you say that the princess was unruly and uneducated, and her appearance and temperament were as bad as if she drank something strange when she grew up, so you didn't want to pay attention to her?" Fut. After hearing Dancing Costume's merciless retelling, Colored Glaze almost spat out on the spot. On the surface, Dancing Costume was a samurai who protected and monitored Colored Glaze, but in reality, the two grew up together and were as close as sisters. So before Raito appeared, Colored Glaze would complain to Dancing Costume whenever she wanted to, and because she complained so much, she often forgot who she was complaining about. For a moment, Colored Glaze's expression became very awkward, and her little butt on the chair also twisted and turned, not knowing if there was something strange under her butt. Suspicious. From Dancing Costume's point of view, Colored Glaze's flustered expression and shifty eyes were very suspicious, as if she was doing something shameful. "Who are you talking to? Be honest and tell me, okay? I already said no. I was just..." Beep 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 beep. Just as Colored Glaze was insisting that she was definitely not doing anything shameful, a new text message was sent to her phone. Again. Colored Glaze turned her head and secretly glanced at her phone, then saw that the sender was Raito Kiri again. Dancing Dress hurriedly looked over and leaned over to ask, "You're here again. Seeing how secretive you are, could you be a man?" "How could it be? If it's a man, he'll be thrown into the Tokyo Bay tomorrow to feed the fish." After swearing an oath on Raito's cheap life of a million, Colored Glaze blocked Dancing Costume with one hand to prevent her from getting any closer, while her other hand opened the text message to see what this guy was up to. But because the situation was more or less rushed, Colored Glaze did not see the voice symbol next to the text message. That's right, the voice symbol was a voice message, the kind that would automatically read out loud once opened. Thus, the second after Colored Glaze opened the text message, Raito's righteous tone appeared in the room. "Milady, I think that our relationship should be developed step by step, so kissing is a bit too much. But if you really want it that badly, it's not impossible to give it to you tomorrow." Raito's voice floated in Milady's room, and clearly entered Colored Glaze's and Dancing Costume's ears. In an instant, the room fell into a deathly silence. Colored Glaze stared at her phone with wide eyes, while Dancing Costume stared at Colored Glaze with wide eyes, as if she had seen something unbelievably terrifying. Did I hear wrong? Why would that idiot Raito suddenly say something stupid like complete, kiss, want? The moment she reacted, Colored Glaze's pretty face turned red, but she quickly checked the text message on her phone. It would have been better if she didn't see it, but after reading it, Colored Glaze saw the "Don't Kiss Me" message she sent to Raito before. So that's why, did I type it wrong and accidentally send it out, causing that guy to misunderstand? After understanding the root of everything, Colored Glaze first let out a sigh of relief, then couldn't help but shiver. Because even without turning around, she could feel Dancing Costume's frantic breath behind her. "Milady. That was Raito Kiri's voice just now, right? What did you do? How far has it developed?" No. There's really nothing. I swear. He must have lied to Milady. Damn it. I'll bring people to tear him to pieces. Wait. Don't. That night, Colored Glaze's room was filled with chicken feathers and duck blood, giving her a splitting headache. By the time she finally explained everything to Dancing Costume, it was already late at night. This caused Colored Glaze to come to school the next day with dark circles under her eyes. It was so infuriating. Chapter 73. When Miss Kanzaki colored glaze came to school early in the morning with dark circles under her eyes and an unhappy expression, it was destined that this would not be an ordinary day. A storm that could engulf all of Tokyo, was brewing. And the cause of this storm was the young master, Raito Kiri, who had been waiting at the entrance of Dori Daiichi High School early in the morning. Most of the classes at Dori Daiichi High School were arranged in the morning, and because there were club activities in the afternoon, the students' time was also very scattered. So usually, the time of school in the morning was the time of the day when there was the most traffic. But early in the morning, a strange scene appeared at the school's entrance. The young master Raito, who had skipped class yesterday, was actually leaning against the entrance of Dori Daiichi High School under the astonished gazes of countless people. From time to time, he would look around as if he was waiting for someone. Waiting for someone? It can't be, right? Could it be that he was waiting at the entrance to take someone's life? If it was a normal student, waiting for a friend at the school's entrance was actually quite normal, but if it was Raito who was waiting for someone, then it was easy for people to think of some scenes that were not suitable for children. So early in the morning, just who was Raito waiting for? Of course, it was colored glaze Kanzaki, who had her heart broken by him last night. Who else could it be? Ever since Raito sent that voice message last night, he had been waiting for a long time, but he did not receive a reply from colored glaze. Wait a minute. Did I speak too directly and hurt her heart? At this time, Raito finally started to panic, so he kept texting and calling colored glaze, but there was no response. With no other choice, Raito could only go to the school's entrance early in the morning to wait for Kanzaki, and try to explain to her that he had just spoken without thinking and had no other intentions. Ah, she's coming. Not long after, when he saw two beautiful figures walking towards him from the crowd, Raito immediately became alert and tried his best to keep a low profile as he walked towards them. Early in the morning, when colored glaze stepped out of her low-profile black car, all the students around her could feel an unprecedented low pressure. Normally, although colored glaze Kanzaki was not as approachable as Yunyang Tsuki, she would not come to school with a sour expression. But today's colored glaze Kanzaki was obviously not in a good mood, and the dark circles under her eyes were very obvious. When she slowly walked towards the school's entrance, Kanzaki's dancing, who got out of the car with her, and said, Kanzaki, why don't you consider putting some makeup on? I never put on makeup. It's not like you don't know that. Who do you think gave it to? It's all thanks to you, okay? Colored glaze Kanzaki pointed at the large dark circles under her left eye and curled her lips at Kanzaki's dancing costume. If it wasn't for Kanzaki's dancing costume going crazy and wanting to kill someone last night, and colored glaze using all sorts of methods to explain herself, she wouldn't have gone to bed so late last night. However, when colored glaze and dancing costume arrived at the entrance where there was the most traffic, her dim eyes suddenly caught sight of a low-profile figure walking towards them. That guy had his head down and his waist bent like a cat, as if he didn't want to attract attention. But unfortunately, the surrounding students who were running away as if they had seen a ghost had already exposed the identity of this Voldemort. Isn't that guy Raito? Me. When she saw Longzhu walking towards her, colored glaze first snorted coldly, then as if she had thought of something, her cheeks slightly flushed. Although last night's misunderstanding was caused by her hand slipping. But when she carefully thought about it, colored glaze couldn't help but roll around on the bed. The butterflies in her stomach were running wild. After all, words like kiss, complete, and want were too stimulating for colored glaze. Since she was raised as a vegetarian king from a young age, her understanding of the relationship between men and women was strictly controlled by her family. But from the descriptions in some books, colored glaze could imagine how hot it would feel if intimate contact between men and women happened between her and the person she liked. Of course, even so, it didn't mean that colored glaze was willing to do those things with Raito. Especially after hearing Raito's reply last night, colored glaze was still a bit angry. What, in the voice chat, he made it sound like I was a horny slut. That's too much. Therefore, when she saw Raito walk towards her, as if he had something to say to her, colored glaze's first reaction was to act haughty and leave. She would wait for Raito to catch up and then listen to him slowly apologize. I'm still angry. If you don't apologize to me for 5 minutes, I won't talk to you. As if she was deliberately throwing a tantrum, Colored Glaze quickly pulled the dancing costume in another direction, as if she wanted to purposely go around Raito. Although this action was tens of meters away, Raito obviously noticed it. Wait. Don't. Hence, he immediately raised his hand and tried to stop Liu Li from running. At the very least, it wouldn't be too late for her to run after listening to his explanation. But just as Raito was about to approach and Colored Glaze was about to pretend to run away, another tall and curvy figure came over and inserted herself between the two. Oh, isn't this Raito, classmate? Good morning. It was different from Colored Glaze's crisp voice that carried a trace of majesty and valiance, as if it was a unique voice that made people feel like they were in a forest. Suddenly, the voice that came from Raito's side sounded much softer, more mellow and smooth, and it also brought out the beauty of a woman's voice to the extreme. Raito heard this voice the day before yesterday, and it just so happened that the owner of this voice was one of the few girls in school who would take the initiative to greet him. So he turned his head to look, and saw Yunyan's beautiful figure slowly walking towards him, with a smile as bright as the morning sun on her face. Yunyang, good morning. After seeing Yunyang, Raito immediately stopped and waved at the beautiful senior with a smile. Most people in school thought that Raito was a mad dog, so they didn't even dare to approach him. But after the incident the day before yesterday, Yunyang knew that he wasn't that kind of person, but a promising young man with noble morals. Why did she say that? Because he was willing to help Yunyang with her writing, so he must be a promising young man. When she came to Raito's side, Yunyang asked in a concerned tone, "Oh right, you didn't come to school yesterday, did something special happen?" Something did happen, but let's talk about it as we walk. Just after Yunyang came over, Raito could feel at least a few hundred eyes looking at them, which made him feel a bit awkward. So, early in the morning, Yunyang and Raito Kiri walked side by side in the direction of the school gate under the watchful eyes of everyone. When the surrounding crowd saw this scene, they suddenly became excited. Colored Glaze, who originally wanted to throw a tantrum and act high and mighty, and wait for Raito to apologize, had her brain freeze on the spot. Chapter 74. Why? Why did this guy Raito hook up with Yunyang so quickly? And from the looks of it, they seem to be very familiar with each other. Just 2 days ago, Colored Glaze did indeed hear that Raito was going to contact Yunyang, but she didn't think that he would act so quickly, and that their relationship would develop so quickly. Originally, with the severity of Colored Glaze's situation, it would be very difficult for Raito to hook up with Miss Tsukiji. After all, not every miss had the heart of a bodhisattva and magnanimous like her, to be able to tolerate that idiot's steel-like straight man's mental state. But what people didn't expect was, this early in the morning, what the hell did Colored Glaze see? Under Liu Li's gaze that was as if she had seen a ghost, Long Do and Yunyang walked into the campus side by side. Moreover, the two of them were talking and laughing, looking very happy. At this moment, Colored Glaze, who was just throwing a tantrum at Raito, felt very embarrassed. It was as if the person she was throwing a tantrum at had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and was snatched away halfway. Miss. Wait, my head hurts, let me rest. Just as Colored Glaze was holding her forehead and closing her eyes to rest, this strange storm quickly blew from outside the school gate to inside the school gate. If the situation of Raito waiting at the gate was enough to attract attention, then him and Yunyang walking into the school side by side, and even talking and laughing, this scene could only be described as a fatty and little boy holding hands again. It was well known that although Yunyang was a very easy person to get along with, she had always maintained a polite distance with boys. The proof was that until now, no one had ever seen Yunyang alone with a boy. Moreover, this kind of situation where the two of them were talking and laughing at the same time going to school early in the morning was actually a somewhat immature and romantic act. Even if they weren't a couple, it would only happen between a boy and a girl who had feelings for each other. Could it be? It can't be. Yunyang and Raito Kiri? This was simply super big news. Of course, the current relationship between Yunyang and Raito wasn't that kind of relationship. At most they were the relationship between a lousy author and an unlucky editor. But the feeling of them talking and laughing along the way really made it easy for people to think the wrong way. The worst thing was that it wasn't one or two people who thought the wrong way, but the whole school together. Not long after, as usual, this morning's classes started as usual. But whether it was in the first, second grade, or third grade classes, a new pace, a storm was still rapidly brewing quickly. Many years ago, the computer brain of Dory First Senior High School had set up a forum called First Senior High BBS to share some interesting things and gossip in the school. Most of the time, most of the students didn't have a habit, so most students didn't have a habit with the habit. However, there was a huge change in the situation today. Any student, as long as they quietly opened the First High BBS with their mobile phone under the cover of a book, they would definitely see the crazy posts like a virus. Because of the big event that happened this morning, most of the posts naturally revolved around the two central figures. One of them was the third year's school belle who was loved by everyone. She was the cloud goose in the moonlight. The other was the second-year school bully, Tongsheng Ryudu, who was feared by everyone and was the reincarnated ghost of a ghost. If someone said that these two names would be together before today, that person would definitely think that there was something wrong with their brain. But now it was different. The situation had changed rapidly. It was like the Earth was invaded by aliens. Even on the First High BBS, the most popular voting post was, "What do you think the relationship between Yun Yang and that person is?" After a morning, the voting results of this post were as follows. The votes for absolutely no relationship were 726 votes. The votes for anyway, let's call the police first, were 921 votes. The votes for Raito Kiri should die were 869, 672, 6592, 271 votes. How to describe it? Who knew where this school got so many people? It was simply a universal public outrage. The wave that this incident set off was something that even Raito and Yun Yang didn't expect. For the whole day, almost all the students from the first grade to the third grade didn't want to go to class. They constantly used all kinds of reasoning and discussion, beating around the bush, and making up nonsense to try to uncover the truth of the matter, while at the same time cursing someone to get hit by a truck and go to another world. This kind of noisy and restless atmosphere made Masato Tokayama, who was sitting in the first-year F class, feel very unhappy. In this first high school that focused on the academic atmosphere, the students' academic performance had a very clear correlation with their class. Each grade was divided into 6 classes from A to F. The best students were concentrated in a class, and the worst students would naturally fall into F class. As for how Raito, that guy, got into B class, it was obviously because he worked very hard during the exam. He tried his best to threaten the unlucky guy next to him to help him finish the exam, so that he wouldn't fall into F class, which was full of trash. From the point of view that even Raito didn't want to go to F class students were more or less discriminated against in school. As a result, they worked especially hard after entering F class, striving to get a chance to be promoted in the next exam. Of course, this so-called promotion desire had nothing to do with Masato Tokayama. He felt that F class was pretty good, and it was quiet in this place. In the eyes of ordinary students, Masato Tokayama was an unremarkable guy. He was thin, had a melancholy temperament, and his messy hair almost covered his eyes. He was usually alone, giving people a serious feeling of being unsociable. In most classes, there would be 1 or 2 such students, and not many people would pay attention to them. But Masato Tokayama wasn't an ordinary student. In fact, his degree of excellence was far beyond what ordinary people could imagine. Ring 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 ring. After a chaotic day, the bell that signified the end of school rang throughout the campus. Gao Yuan carried his school bag and walked out of the school with familiarity. For Masato Tokayama, he had to deal with the business affairs of several companies, so he didn't have time to waste in school. But what he didn't expect was that when he left the school building, 2 strange people hiding in the dark had already locked onto this elite ghost figure, like a big cat that saw a mouse. Chapter 75. At this moment, the 2 people who were secretly watching Gao Yuan were naturally Long Do and Ming Ji. After looking at the face that he was tired of looking at for 2 days, Sensible couldn't help but sigh. Masato Gao Yuan. From the surface, he doesn't look like such a vicious guy. From the surface, you don't look like such a capable guy. Don't judge a book by its cover, brother. Unlike Sensible, when Raito looked at Gao Yuan, His gaze was like looking at a hen that could lay golden eggs. In fact, Masato Geo Yuan was indeed a hen that could lay golden eggs, but from a certain point of view, this hen laid poisonous eggs. In these 2 days, Raito asked Sensible to investigate Geo Yuan and obtained a lot of information about him. Although Raito already knew what Geo Yuan was doing in the dark through the content of the game didn't explain in detail, so he still needed some details. And Sensible lived up to the name Cyber Detective. After Raito gave him the direction to investigate, he quickly investigated Geo Yuan. Masato Takahara, 15 years old, male, his father was the executive director of the large gaming company Nintendo. He was the 3rd child in the family. His 2 brothers' grades were excellent, and they both worked in the family company. Masato Geo Yuan, who grew up in this situation, wasn't very valued and didn't get along well with others. Whether it was in his family or in school, there weren't many people who would pay attention to him. Therefore, 3 years ago, Geo Yuan began to try to make a name for himself. And the direction he was trying to make a name for himself was to develop into a business consultant, and he shocked everyone with his skills. When he was 12 years old, Geo Yuan used his unique business sense and unscrupulous business model to help a company come back from the dead. From then on, he gained the name Business Ghost. Now, he was a secret business consultant for 5 listed companies, the kind that only served the top managers. Although he had never shown his face, those operators were very convinced because as long as they followed Geo Yuan's train of thought, they would be able to make a lot of money. However, although Geo Yuan was able to make the company's business situation quite good, as Sensible said, this guy's business methods could only be described as vicious. As the saying goes, the business world is like a battlefield, but this is just a metaphor. Many businessmen in the Tokyo circle still want some face, and they won't do things so ruthlessly. However, in Geo Yuan's hands, it was as literal as it could be. He treated the business war as a battlefield. He would do anything for the sake of victory. Examples for comparison are as follows: the traditional business strategy of Tokyo's business circle. By dissecting the weaknesses of human nature and specializing in the loopholes of the law, it could be used thousands of miles away to convert value into resources. Using all kinds of black technology, spies, hackers, and other auxiliary plans to achieve results-oriented structural enterprises to pave the way. Geo Yuan's subordinate, Shong Zhon, arranging for takeout staff to put laxatives in competitors' water fountains, ordering a few burly men to rush into the office to snatch the official seal, bribing security guards to climb over the wall into competitors' factory to secretly take photos, and hiring hooligans to walk around their company every day. Arranging for actors to cooperate with the TV station to fake the other party's door and add a hell filter. Buying a water army to smear the other party to death, or simply putting a burlap bag over the head of the other party's senior management to beat them up at night. In summary, Geo Yuan's business war was a real business war. It was not the kind of high-end business war that people imagined. If you can use the hammer directly, you won't use your brain. If you use your brain, you don't have to be afraid of being locked up. In any case, as long as you can suppress the opponent and make money for yourself, you bastard. Under this kind of business model that could be said to be extremely unethical, the boss of Geo Yuan's company was always one step away from going to jail. His butt would always be greased and waiting for the favor of the prisoner. But he himself didn't care about this. In any case, it was the boss who went to jail, not him. At worst, he could just change companies and continue. Was the boss's fortune telling? Once he earned this money, he would be ready to pick up soap at any time. Did he really think that money was so easy to earn? Of course, Geo Yuan didn't purely rely on all kinds of despicable methods to win the world. He was actually very good at all kinds of normal business methods that wandered the edge of the law. It was just that he preferred to use simple and convenient tactics. In fact, just the day before, Geo Yuan instructed one of his companies to hire another company called BlackBerry Conscience Finance to collect a debt by force. This Conscience Finance appeared to be an ordinary financial company on the surface, but in fact, it was a debt collection group formed by violent groups. This kind of debt collection group was on the border between legal and illegal. They would use some very uncomfortable methods to collect debts, but it was useless to call the police. Of course, in addition to collecting debts, They also did some other financial work, such as phone calls, online fraud, and counterfeiting. In this era, this kind of financial company that was on the border between legal and illegal was very common. It was also a half-legal industry that changed from extreme to semi-legal. Of course, to put it bluntly, it was a group of trash that relied on bullying honest people to make money. However, what could be used should be used. Even if it was trash, it could be used to great effect in Gao Yuan's hands. The most important thing was that he always hid behind the phone. No matter what he ordered the company to do, no one could find him. Takahara Masato, the person who hired Conscience Finance to collect debts, was you, right? Just as Gao Yuan left the school gate and came to a more remote corner, a powerful hand wrapped around him like a ghost. Huh! In an instant, Gao Yuan was completely stunned. How is this possible? Someone knows that I was the one who arranged yesterday's incident. In the next second, Gao Yuan turned his head stiffly. When he saw the ferocious face with dyed yellow hair, his body suddenly trembled violently. It was Raito Kiri, the famous second generation in Dori First High. Gao Yuan naturally had a certain understanding of Raito and the Rulong group. But the most important thing was that Long Do had actually exposed his biggest secret in an instant. This made Gao Yuan feel a chill in his heart. He immediately took a deep breath and said with a bitter smile, I don't know what you're talking about. Yesterday, the company that you sent people to violently collect debts from is under the protection of the Dragon Group. In other words, the person that you and your company offended is me. Do you understand what will happen to you, friend? When he put his arm around Gao Yuan's shoulder like a close friend, Raito showed a gentle smile on his face. But in Gao Yuan's eyes, this smile was more terrifying than the devil from the 18 levels of hell. Chapter 76. No, it can't be. The company that I sent people to violently collect debts is under the protection of the Ru Long Group. Why don't I know this information at all? Wait, the most important thing is, how did they know my identity? How did I get exposed? Suddenly, Gao Yuan's legs couldn't help but tremble. He knew that the underground world was very particular about face. If his organization was messed with by other organizations, then he must do something to save his face. The worst thing was that Gao Yuan's true identity was known by the extreme elements. Wouldn't that be the end of him? From Gao Yuan's point of view, he absolutely couldn't allow his identity to be made public. After all, his parents and brothers were senior executives of legal listed companies, the famous Nanetyo managers. If the public knew that Gao Yuan's family had such an unscrupulous business ghost who often crossed the legal line, it would definitely cause a serious blow to his family. In the area of Yoto, people cared more about their face than their family background. Their heads could be broken, blood could flow, but their hairstyle couldn't be messed up. If this kind of scandal were to be exposed, Gao Yuan's family would lose all face. A collective bow and an apology would not be enough. At the very least, they would have to add traditional etiquette such as a tearful performance and kowtow and kneel. At that time, Gao Yuan, who had embarrassed his family, would be expelled from the family and homeless on the streets. Even if Rulong Group continued to retaliate against him, it would not be impossible for him to die on the streets. Thinking of that scene, Gao Yuan's face was covered in a few drops of cold sweat. At the same time, he said with a trembling voice, "How much? How much do you want?" After being a business consultant for so many years, Gao Yuan naturally had a lot of money in his hands. If he could use money to bribe Raito, then this matter could be considered to be resolved satisfactorily. However, Raito shook his head and replied with a smile, "Although money is a good thing, I don't think this alone is enough to show your sincerity." Sincerity? Don't tell me, he wants me to. In an instant, Gao Yuan couldn't help but think of the extremely terrifying punishments he had seen in manga. As he thought about it, his legs turned to jelly. He almost lost control of his bladder and was about to pee. No matter what, Gao Yuan was only a 15-year-old boy. Although he was a big shot in the business world, he was just a coward. In fact, according to the feedback from Raito's Rogue Analysis Mirror, this guy's courage was only at the level of LVL1, mortal scraps. This was also the reason why he only dared to do business remotely through the phone, because he didn't dare to stand in the open. It was about time for him to atone for his sins with merit. Seeing that Jiao Yuan looked like he was about to piss his pants, Raito's lips curled into a strange smile. He smiled and said, "Jiao Yuan Masato, your business acumen and style of doing things are very good. Are you interested in working for me? What? Follow him?" When he heard this sudden invitation, Jiao Yuan was startled at first, but then he heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he thought he was going to be thrown into the Tokyo Bay to feed the fish. So he just wanted to poach him? Jiao Yuan had a deep understanding of his own ability and value. He naturally knew what Raito's poaching meant. In this materialistic world, even the Rulon Group needed money. And Takahara Masato was the person who could bring monetary returns to all organizations. Therefore, under Raito's deceit and intimidation, Jiao Yuan soon appeared in the corner of a coffee shop. In the half-private room in the corner of the coffee shop, there were 3 young people sitting at this time. 3 young people wearing Dori First High School uniforms. First year Takahara Masato, second year Raito Kiri, third year Sensible Goro. On the surface, this scene looked like 3 ordinary friends sitting together and chatting, but in fact, the identity of these 3 people was far from ordinary. Their father was a senior executive of a listed company, and he controlled 5 large enterprises. He had a keen business sense and a habit of doing business by any means necessary. Their father was the Tokyo police chief, and he secretly acted as a network detective. He had superhuman insight and a full understanding of the law, cyber detective. Their father was the leader of a large group. On the surface, he was playing a love game, but in fact, he was playing an action-adventure game to raise the extreme dragon. From a certain point of view, the family background and experience of the 3 were somewhat similar. They all had a prominent family background, but they wanted to make their own business. The most important thing was that they were the kind of people who didn't hesitate to cross the boundary of the law and wander in the dark. Therefore, Raito gave his group a name, Black 3 Stars. In the corner of the coffee shop, Raito also drank milk while telling Jiao Yuan some things about the Heavenly Eye Group. At the same time, he clearly told him that he wanted to use his power to start a war with this group. I see. Heavenly Eye Group, so there is such a terrifying company in the world. Regarding the Heavenly Eye Group and Heavenly Eye Eyeheim, even a business veteran like Jiao Yuan had a hard time finding out. At this time, he couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. Therefore, Raito struck while the iron was hot and asked, "So, have you decided to do it with us? You didn't plan to let me go anyway. What's the point of asking such a question? Ha ha ha, it's not a question of whether I plan to let you go or not. It's just that it's too wasteful for a talent like you to just control a few small enterprises behind the scenes." Long Do giggled as he tried to play dumb. At the same time, he discreetly gave Jiao Yuan a compliment. In fact, Jiao Yuan didn't have a choice now. After all, his background had been dug out. What else could he do if he didn't join? Wait to wander the streets. What's more, Jiao Yuan was indeed very interested in the Heavenly Eye Group, just like Sensible before. After all, no matter what, Jiao Yuan and Sensible were only teenagers. The atmosphere of fighting against an evil company that is harming the world behind the scenes was quite attractive. And under Raito's banner, they could unscrupulously display their strengths. This was indeed a very tempting combination. Let's talk about something serious. After confirming the addition of this new partner, Sensible, who was sitting across from him and eating cream cake, asked, "Now the Rulon Group needs money and needs a business that can continue to make money. What do you think about this?" In terms of law, Sensible could be said to be an expert, but in terms of business, he wasn't. If there was a need to solve some legal issues, he could provide help. When it came to making money, it wasn't Sensible's specialty. Well, if the Rulon Group needs to develop a business that can continue to make money, then the first thing to do is to find a relatively clean shell. After all, the Rulon Group name can't be used. At this point, Jiao Yuan picked up a chocolate bar from the table, put it in his mouth, and crunched it into pieces. Chapter 77. In Jiao Yuan's opinion, The extreme Tao of this era was very sad. Since the release of the Violent Group Countermeasure Law, groups that were blacklisted as designated violent groups were strictly monitored by the government and society, and it was difficult for them to engage in any open industry. Therefore, the designated violent groups could either turn over a new leaf, or slowly disappear on their own in a half-dead state. Or they could simply go all the way and engage in the darkest industries such as guns, anesthetics, and organ trafficking until they rotted in the gutter. At this time, the Rulong group was in the second situation, in a visible half-dead state. Because of the double restrictions of the Violent Group Countermeasure Law and the chivalrous spirit. While the Rulong group was declining, they were unwilling to engage in the darker industries. In the long run, naturally, they could not make ends meet, and it was particularly awkward. In this situation, it was obviously quite difficult for the Rulong group to make money, but it was not completely impossible. The designated violent group has too many restrictions and is not conducive to action, so first, we have to find some shell companies or companies that appear to be decent, and then let the members of the Rulong group leave the group to join. This way, we can break up the whole group into parts, and at the same time, engage in some legal profiteering industries. That makes sense. Then what industry would be better? Well, if it's suitable for your line of work, can make money faster, and can be called a profiteering industry, first of all, a security company can be considered. Security company? Something like bodyguards. Personal bodyguard business is also included, but the security company itself has a wide range of services, from permanent staff to temporary guards, escorting cash, valuables, and so on. If you can get in touch with the business and political circles, then it's a business with limitless potential. According to Gao Yuan's knowledge, the annual profits of several large and medium-sized security companies in Tokyo were quite considerable, and the services they provided were not special. To put it bluntly, whose money was the security company earning? It was the rich people's money. For example, providing security services for the rich when they go out, it was common for them to make a net profit of millions of yen. If he could cooperate with insurance companies and provide security services for companies or individuals who bought large amounts of insurance, or even get in touch with public authorities, it would be even faster than money laundering. However, to engage in this kind of business, one needed an extremely wide range of contacts and trustworthiness, as well as a large number of capable elite subordinates. This was not a business that ordinary people could do. A security company. That's doable. This is a very suitable way for me to earn money. Compared to Gao Yuan, Raito naturally knew more about his own situation. First and foremost, he was the young master of the Rulong group, and he had his own special intelligence network and a group of capable subordinates. Secondly, with the help of Masato Takashi, who had eyes and ears in the business world, he could quickly open up cooperation channels in the business world and ensure that customers would come quickly. After that, there was Sensible, a detective hacker who could invade the police department system. He could immediately understand all the movements of the Tokyo Regional Police Department. At the same time, he was proficient in the law and could find many legal loopholes. After that, Raito also had a relationship with the young lady of the Tsukujiri Consortium, and he could buy a lot of high-tech weapons and equipment that were not circulated on the market. After that, the Konoshiro clan could almost be said to control half of Nippon's political world. If Colored Glaze was willing to help, he could quickly establish a relationship with the government and ensure that the security company could set sail smoothly. This was great. The source of money and the huge network of connections were combined together. Raito could even hear the beautiful sound of money flowing quickly. At this moment, Sensible on the side asked in confusion, but even if the Rulong group established a security company, it will still take some time to compete with the other established companies in Tokyo. It doesn't matter, as long as they lose their reputation. My reputation is ruined. I'm familiar with those security companies. Their crisis management and public relations capabilities are very poor. They are completely useless people lying in their comfort zone. So if they were attacked by unknown people in the recent mission, causing the mission to fail, and then the failure of the mission quickly spread to the streets and the internet, then their credibility will definitely plummet. Mph. Wow, so vicious, worthy of being a business ghost. Although Gao Yuan didn't say it explicitly, His meaning was very obvious. That was, if the Rulong Group established a security company, there was no need for other security companies in the Tokyo area. No matter what industry, no matter what era, the business of monopolizing was the most profitable. Coupled with the fact that Tokyo was full of rich people, as long as the oil was squeezed out of the rich people, the profits that could be brought by this oil was simply immeasurable. So Raito said decisively, "It's decided, let's do it. We'll leave immediately." "Leave immediately? Where are we going?" After hearing the boss's words, Sensible and Jiao Yuan also stood up, but they didn't know where the boss wanted to go. "To our new company, Rulong Security Company, the temporary office." Since it was a new company, even if it didn't have an office building, it should at least have a decent office. As for the location of the office, Raito actually thought about it a long time ago because there was a ready-made office in front of him. However, the ready-made office still had the bright words BlackBerry Finance hanging on the door at this time. As long as someone passed by here, they would be puzzled by such a strange finance company. But if they were brave enough to walk in, what they saw would inevitably make them feel more puzzled. On the surface, this was just an ordinary office, with tables, chairs, stools, phones, computers, and other daily work appliances. However, the curtains that had never been opened and the thick soundproof door formed an isolated island here, an isolated island that was completely isolated from the outside world. The employees who worked on the island all wore ferocious looks and were dressed in sloppy and hooligan clothes. They used beautiful words to greet customers through the phone. "Remember, trash, you must return the money by tomorrow. Don't even think about running, or I'll burn your whole family. Hey, Mom, I caused some trouble outside and need some money. Hurry up and transfer the money to this account." "What? You don't have a son? F***CKU, hurry up and transfer the money. That batch of $100 bills? I'm dealing with it, don't worry. How can so many $100 bills be cleaned up so quickly? Can you get some $1,000 bills next time?" When Raito, Sensible, and Jiao Yuan stood at the entrance of the BlackBerry Finance, they seemed to be able to hear the friendly roar from inside through the thick soundproof door. Chapter 78. Is it just the three of us? Don't we need to find more people? When Jiao Yuan came to the door of Conscience Finance, he couldn't help but gulp. He was timid to begin with. Not to mention, Raito didn't bring them here just to chat. From Jiao Yuan's understanding of the Conscience Finance, the people inside were former members of the violent gang. After leaving the violent gang, they opened a finance company that specialized in loan sharks, debt collectors, money laundering, fraud, and other work. Although they were former members of the violent gang, they were undoubtedly a group of underground society members. They were a group of murderers that did whatever they wanted. But Raito said he wanted this office. He wanted to use this as the starting place for the Rulong Security Company. Did he plan to buy it with money? If that's the case, he would be ripped off. Knock knock knock. Just as Jiao Yuan was thinking about this, Raito took the lead and knocked on the door with the simple Conscience Finance sign. Instantly, Jiao Yuan couldn't help but take a step back. "TSK, don't be such a coward." Mingji, who was beside him, chuckled after seeing his actions. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, our boss is the young master of the Rulong Group. He can call thousands of people with one phone call." That's true. Ha ha ha, don't be so nervous." Longdo also smiled brightly and said, "Actually, these underground financiers aren't that unreasonable. You just have to smile and deal with them, and you'll be fine." "Is that so? I see. Boss, you're right. I almost believed you." After hearing Raito's explanation, Jiao Yuan forced a smile on his face, but the panic in his eyes didn't decrease at all. Bang! In the next moment, as the door was violently opened, a bald man wearing an old suit with a scar on his forehead walked out. "Ah! Kid, what are you doing here? This isn't a place to play video games." When he saw 3 high school students standing outside the door, the bald scarred man's face showed an impatient expression. Raito smiled and said, "We are here for business. Anyway, let's go in first. It's not convenient to talk outside." "Serious business? I say, Are you guys looking down on Extreme Dao, you bastards? Suddenly, the bald scarred man frowned. He quickly raised his hands and clasped them together, preparing to make crackling sounds to intimidate the other party. Unfortunately, Long Do's movements were much faster than his. Just as this guy raised his hand, a hard fist landed on his chin without hesitation. Under Sensible and Gao Yuan's dumbfounded gaze, Right-OS punch sent the scarred bald man stumbling back through the door. After stumbling a few meters, he clutched his chin and fell to the ground. Which Extreme Dao would specifically give a warning before beating someone up? Is this guy an idiot? But it also confirmed my conjecture. This group of gangsters who engage in conscience finance is just a group of amateurs. With this level of skill, they want to learn how to collect debts. After casually knocking down the first person he met to the ground, Long Do swaggered in, not recognizing even his own family. Looking at his posture, it was as if he didn't see anyone else in the room as a person. It was as if he was surrounded by a group of SpongeBob SquarePants. Other than the bald man who was knocked down, there were 3 other people in the room. One was a red-haired gangster who wore a flowery shirt and dyed red hair. He looked like he failed to cosplay as Iori Yagami and instead, he cosplayed as Eunuch Yagami. Another one was a strong man who held a phone in one hand and a dumbbell in the other. His huge muscles were as thick as a white shirt. He was not someone to be trifled with. The last one was dressed in a nice suit. His hair was neatly combed. At first glance, he looked like a white-collar worker, but the cunning expression on his face and the murderous glint in his eyes could not be hidden. When Long Do knocked the bald man down with a single punch, the other 3 people in the room immediately stood up from their chairs and looked over in unison. "Hey, brat, what are you doing? Do you want to die?" Seeing that his companion was beaten up, the red-haired gangster immediately picked up a baseball bat from the side and rushed over. Although this gangster looked naive, the baseball bat in his hand was strong and vigorous. It seemed like he often used this thing to beat people up. However, Raito didn't dodge the bat that was swinging towards him. Instead, he directly extended his right hand to block it. Is this guy crazy? Using his arm to block the bat's attack? Does he think he's a little golden man with copper skin and iron bones? Crack. Just when everyone thought that Raito's arm would definitely be broken, a crisp sound came from the bat. Hey! This! What's going on? In the next second, the red-haired gangster looked at the broken baseball bat in his hand. His eyes were about to pop out. How is this possible? This is a composite baseball bat with a hardness close to an aluminum bat. Is this guy's arm made of steel? If it was a big guy with thick arms and thighs could do this, the others wouldn't be so surprised. But Raito's small 16-year-old arm could actually break the baseball bat. Isn't this too exaggerated? Here, are you shocked? This is the power of Krypton Gold. When everyone was shocked by this magical scene, Raito proudly raised his head. At the same time, he showed a painful expression. In fact, before coming here, Raito secretly bought 2 new passive skills from the Krypton Gold store. Iron Bone Mastery and Copper Skin Mastery. These 2 skills cost a total of 2 million, which made Raito's wallet flatten a lot. But the use of this money was quite obvious. At this moment, these 2 skills were described in Raito's skill pane. Skill pane, Iron Bone Mastery, can greatly increase bone hardness, 20% proficiency. Skill pane, Copper Skin Mastery, can greatly increase skin hardness, 20% proficiency. With the existence of these 2 passive skills, Raito's physical strength naturally increased by a large margin. It was as if he practiced some kind of hard qigong. This skill combined with the LV3 physique, professional master physical fitness. To put it in an exaggerated way, even if he stood there and let people hit him, they might not be able to defeat him. Although it was not to the extent of the legendary Copper Skin Iron Bone, invulnerable state, but his endurance was already quite shocking. Moreover, this was only under the condition that the proficiency of the 2 passive skills was only 20%. Chapter 79. Raito only had a preliminary understanding of skill proficiency. First of all, regardless of whether it was an active or passive skill, when first learned, the proficiency level was very low. For example, Furumaki-style martial arts was only at a pitiful 1%. As the proficiency level increased, its power and effect would naturally increase. But the process of increasing proficiency level was not easy. The first way to increase proficiency level was naturally to practice diligently. For example, continuously practicing Furumaki-style ultimate skill, Tiger Fall, would inevitably increase proficiency level. But this method of increasing proficiency level was very slow. After all, to truly master a martial art, it would take years as a unit of time. For Raito, who was at most 2 years away from the final battle, it was impossible to achieve his goal by just practicing diligently. Therefore, he could only place his hopes on the second method, which was the most practical and realistic method, which was to spend money. From the current situation, when buying a skill book, Raito could not only automatically learn the skill, but also obtain 20% proficiency level. In other words, as long as he continuously bought 5 identical skill books, he would be able to raise the skill to 100% proficiency level. At that time, he would truly be a master, majestic, invincible, and able to leap onto roofs and vault over walls. But skill books were not something that could be bought just because one wanted to. It was not even something that could be bought with money. After all, the items in the shop would only be refreshed after death, and it was also randomly refreshed. Therefore, in the worst-case scenario, Raito might need to continuously kill himself to crazily farm the shop in order to buy a skill book that he wanted. This was a bit too miserable. Of course, the investment in skills would also bring about huge returns. From this point of view, the benefits of skill books were extremely high in most cases. Especially when he saw the dumbstruck expression of the group of people in the office, Dragon Head felt even more awesome. Your baseball bat is not good, buy a harder one next time. After blocking the bat, Raito casually grabbed the broken baseball bat and without looking, smashed it at the red-haired delinquent's head. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled sound, the red-haired thug's hair turned even redder, as if he had enjoyed a free natural hair dye, and he fell to the ground and fainted. This brat was not an ordinary person. Seeing the tyrannical strength displayed by Raito, as well as the look of complete disregard on his face, the cunning-looking man in a suit could not help but grit his teeth. Therefore, he asked in a cautious tone, "Who are you? What brings you here?" Raito chuckled when he heard this. He walked over to the table and sat down, propping his legs up high. Looking at that arrogant look, those who did not know would think that he was the boss of Conscience Finance. "What the hell are you? Speaking of which, did you scum ask for my permission to loan money here?" "What?" Raito's tone suddenly became very gloomy. His gaze towards the suited man also became incomparably cold. In an instant, the room seemed to be covered by a cold wind of ice and snow. It was as if they had come to the Siberian prairie, and there was a grass mud horse spitting on their faces. Lending money? Asking for permission? Wait, could it be that this brat is someone from the underworld? Although it was hard to imagine that a young man wearing a high school uniform would be someone from the underworld, his aura made people feel that he was not joking at all. After a moment, the suited man swallowed his saliva and sneered, "We are lending money here with the permission of the Rulone Group. Although I don't know which gang you are from, you should at least give some face to the Rulone Group, right?" "Hey!" When they heard the suited man's words, Sensible and Jio Yuan, who were slowly walking in from the door, widened their eyes. The Rulone Group was the largest gang in Tokyo. The name of this organization was naturally very intimidating. However, the problem was that the Rulone Group had never been involved in these kinds of dirty financial crimes. Otherwise, they would not be so poor. Sensible and Jio Yuan were naturally clear about this situation. So, the suited man was putting on an act. Moreover, he was putting on an act in front of the young master of the Rulone Group. What was this? Flood the Dragon King Temple? Playing PR in front of Guan Yu? Thus, Raito smiled and waved his hand. He smiled and said, "Phone. Phone. Immediately call your backer. Pass the phone to me when the call is connected. This. Are you sure? This is not a joke." Immediately, a trace of panic appeared in the suited man's tone. After all, the backer he mentioned was a bluff from the start. Damn it, how could there be such a high school student? He was not even afraid of the Rulone Group. Clearly, not long ago, the young master of that organization was. Hey! Young master? Wait, if I remember correctly, the young master of the Rulone Group, Raito Kiri, is currently a high school student, right? Thinking of this, the suited man's eyes widened, as if he had seen a demon. A high school student in his teens with a head full of yellow hair. Although the legendary Tongsheng Ryudu had a height of 2 meters and a physique comparable to a wrestler, if those exaggerated factors were ignored, the yellow-haired man in front of him was quite similar to the legendary young master Ryudu. He seemed to have noticed. After feeling the sudden change in the suited man's gaze, Raito continued to smile and said, "What? Why didn't you call me? I really want to see how strong your backer is." Cough cough, excuse me. If there's anything, why don't we talk over there? After glancing at his only remaining muscular subordinate and the other 2 high school students who walked in, the suited man made a difficult decision. He extended his hand and gestured at the president's office not far away, inviting Raito in to discuss matters. Catcher. Whoosh. However, just as the 2 of them walked in, the suited man locked the door with the fastest speed possible. He pulled down the curtains, turned his head and jumped up. He did a full 360-degree spin in the air before kneeling down. "I'm very sorry, young Master Raito." The suited man knocked his head on the ground with a bang. His body trembled uncontrollably, and his tears and snot flowed out. "It's over. It's over. It's over." The man in the suit had been putting on airs outside under the cover of the Dragon Group. Now, he had directly bumped into the young master's face. Wasn't this the end for him? At this point, the only thing he could do was, "This is my entire fortune and the deed to this house. Please be magnanimous and show mercy. Spare my life." Without waiting for Raito to say anything, the suited man obediently handed over a bag of cash and an envelope. Chapter 80. Just as Raito had thought, this group of people who set up a financial company to collect debts and swindle people were just a bunch of punks. Moreover, after they left their original gang, in order to avoid paying tribute, they definitely didn't dare to tell their original gang what they were doing. They could only use the name Rulone Group to fool outsiders. Therefore, when they found out that the young master of the Rulone Group was standing in front of them, it was easy to imagine how they felt. However, these people in the business of collecting debts and swindling people really made a lot of money. Raito casually took over the gunny sack that contained the man in the suit and quickly counted the money inside. There were bundles of $10,000 bills, adding up to a few hundred bundles. The amount here should be no less than 5 million. If the deed for the office was included, then this amount of money was indeed not small. Of course, in the suit man's opinion, this amount of money was worth it to buy his life. If he lost his money, he could earn it again, but if he lost his life, then it was over. "Take this guy outside and deal with the transfer procedures with my partner. Then take your men and scram." "Ah, yes, yes." After hearing Raito's words, the man in the suit finally let out a sigh of relief, because this meant that his life was finally saved. Speaking of which, making money like this was pretty easy. Why not start a new business of Black Eat Black? When the man in the suit happily ran out and prepared to deal with the transfer of the office contract with Sensible, Raito silently thought while counting the money. The Rulone Group definitely couldn't casually do things like Black Eat Black. Even if it was a punk without any background, if it was done too often, it would cause public outrage. After all, once or twice was fine, but if Raito went out every day to rob and extort other people, then it would only cause disgust and anger. At that time, no matter how powerful the Rulone Group was, they couldn't avoid it. Moreover, the Rulone Group had always prided itself as a chivalrous man. If his father found out that his son had been robbing others, he would probably be so angry that he would break out of prison and beat Raito up. However, even if the young master of the Rulone Group, Raito Kiri, couldn't do it, it didn't mean that Raito himself couldn't do it. As long as he didn't reveal his identity when doing this kind of dirty work, then no one would know that it was Raito who did it. That would be fine. For example, wearing a Batman mask in the middle of the night and then going out to punish evil and maintain the peace of Tokyo, this is a matter of course, right? While Raito, Batman, Might do some cute little tricks like extortion while punishing evil, but probably no one would care. It was decided that he would go out and rob someone tonight. After counting the money, Long Do found that there was a total of 6.25 million yuan in the sack. A happy smile appeared on his face. After purchasing 2 passive skills, Raito's little treasury only had the extremely auspicious number of 44 million left. But after obtaining the man in the suit's entire net worth, it suddenly soared to 10.69 million. He was rich again in an instant. It felt like a needle poking through a needle. Knock, knock. Just as Raito was enjoying his spoils of war, Jiao Yuan knocked on the door and walked in. As expected of a real professional. He got a sum of money and a base of operations so easily. Looking at Long Do, who was sitting behind his desk leisurely counting money, Jiao Yuan really felt like prostrating himself in front of him. It had only been about 5 minutes since the 3 of them entered Conscience Finance, and everything was over. Moreover, Long Do was the kind that beat people up as soon as he came in. Even so, the other party still had to obediently hand over the money and the deed, and then obediently carry their unconscious companion away. Was this the power of an extreme Dao expert? Ordinary hooligans were like ants in front of him. Seeing Raito quietly put on a show, Jiao Yuan made up his mind to make the Rulong Security Company flourish and squeeze all the money out of the rich. I'll change the company's name and scope of business in a while. I'll also open a company account. Of course, I'll arrange for a few stand-ins with clean identities to stand on the surface. The 3 of us and the Rulong group don't have to be involved. Speaking of which, Raito, Jiao Yuan and Sensible's identities were very sensitive, and it wasn't convenient for them to appear publicly in various materials. However, Jiao Yuan had been in the business world for so many years, so he naturally knew all kinds of tricks. For example, he could use stand-ins to deal with the legal person in charge of the company. All he needed to do was spend some money. Oh yeah, after opening the account, how much money should I transfer in? When Jiao Yuan seriously talked about setting up the company, Raito suddenly remembered that the company needed a startup fund. Renovation, personnel expenses, equipment purchase, utilities, social relations, etc. If he calculated carefully, it wasn't cheap to set up a company. There were many things that he had to spend money on. Although the money was technically in the public account and should be paid by the Rulong Group, Raito knew that the Rulong Group was also very poor, so they probably couldn't fork out much money. If it really doesn't work, then I'll have to pay for it myself. Looking at the sack of money on the table, Raito showed a reluctant expression. Unexpectedly, Jiao Yuan shook his head and said with a smile, "The first fund is expected to be injected about 100 million yuan, but this money doesn't need you or the Rulong Group to pay for it." "I'll pay for it, 100 million? Wait, how can I let you pay for it? This is public money. It doesn't matter, just treat it as my investment. Anyway, I have no place to spend my money." Although they were discussing the flow of money in hundreds of millions, Jiao Yuan's tone was still very calm. After all, he had helped other companies for so many years, and he had a lot of money on hand, and Jiao Yuan himself wasn't the kind of person who liked to spend money. Compared to spending money, he preferred to earn money, and the more money he earned, the better. At the same time, Mingji walked in with all kinds of signed documents and started to discuss some of the legal issues involved in the transfer of the company. So this feeling was really magical. Half an hour ago, they were still discussing the establishment of the company in the coffee shop, and half an hour later, they were already doing it. Jiao Yuan was a genius in the business world, and Sensible was an official undercover. With the 2 of them, many things were naturally not a problem at all. Next, as long as the Rulong Group sent people over, they could officially start the operation. When thinking about how many brothers to send over in the first batch, Raito suddenly discovered an important problem. Wait. I don't seem to have discussed with Uncle Fujiki about setting up a company to make money, right? Thinking of this, Raito couldn't help but scratch his head. Chapter 81. Although Tongsheng Ryudu had the most say in the Dragon Group and had become the young master and second-generation leader in many people's eyes, Tongsheng Ryudu still had a lot of power. But in fact, he wasn't officially in position, and even if he was in position, many things had to be discussed with the consultant before he could start. He couldn't act on his own. In particular, Fujiki Yoshio, the old consultant, was one of the subordinates who had followed Tong Saiki for the longest time, so Raito had to ask for his permission. So after returning to the Rulong Group headquarters that night, Raito found Uncle Fujiki and explained his plan to him. From meeting Jiao Yuan and Sensible, two young and promising gods, to establishing the Rulong Security Company, and how to quickly squeeze money out of it. During the process, Fujiki Yoshio didn't say a word, he just silently smoked his tobacco pipe. The uncertain expression on his face made it difficult to figure out what the consultant was thinking. "Uncle Fujiki, what do you think?" After he finished, Raito looked at his expression and asked in an uncertain tone. In any case, Raito must convince Fujiki. Only in this way could this matter proceed smoothly. A few seconds later, Fujiki sighed deeply, put down the tobacco pipe in his hand, and asked in a vicissitude tone, "Young Master Raito, what do you think Extreme Do is?" Raito was silent for a while, then said firmly, "It's a group that is not accepted by today's society." In Raito's view, Extreme Do was a group of people who were exiled by society and could only live in the dark. It's the opposite. But Fujiki shook his head and smiled. It's not that Extreme Do is not accepted by society, but that the people who are not accepted by society form Extreme Do. Although the two of them were stating the same fact, the meanings they represented were completely different. In the view of ordinary people, because Extreme Do became Extreme Do, it was not accepted by society. However, from the very beginning, it was actually a group of people who were not accepted by society and went against the country who chose to huddle together for warmth, thus forming the source of Extreme Tao. There were many people who were out of touch with society and were not allowed to exist by the country, and there were many reasons for that. One of the main reasons was that he was disappointed in this rotten country. In the eyes of Fujiki and the other older generation of Jidao, Japan was a country with a broken backbone. From the top of the government to the bottom, they were all a bunch of dogs with broken backbones. When Tengmu was still very young, something like this happened to him. At that time, Tengmu was taking a tram to travel somewhere. There were a few tall and strong white men on the tram. They spoke fluent English and were shouting loudly without restraint. Tengmu, who couldn't stand the noise, stepped forward to stop them, but he was besieged by the strong men. In front of the hundreds of people on the bus, those strong men gave Tengmu a solid beating and even spat on his face. However, everyone around just hid far away. They didn't even dare to breathe, let alone stand up for Tengmu. Originally, Tengmu was beaten and his skills were not as good as others, so he accepted it. However, what really made him go to Extreme Do was what happened later. On the tram back from the trip, Tengmu saw a few other thin and weak young people also gathered together to make a noise. However, this group of young people didn't make a noise for long before the passengers on the surrounding trams besieged them, accusing them of breaking social rules, having no morals, no family education, and so on. From that moment on, Tengmu understood everything. The residents of Japan were like defeated dogs with broken backbones. When they met people who were weaker than them, they liked to straighten their backs, stand tall, talk about rules, morals, and other things to show their status. When they met people who were stronger than them, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. When they were stepped on, they didn't dare to make a sound. They chose to lower their heads and pretend that the feces on their heads were leftover curry. This was not a matter of one person, but the situation of the whole society and the whole country. The mentality of bullying the weak and fearing the strong was engraved in everyone's bones. Therefore, there was a need for Extreme Do, a need for this kind of tough guy who would not compromise with the strong and the powerful. In this abnormal country where everyone else lives on their knees and is proud of being enslaved by the strong, we Extreme Do are the only people who are standing because our knees are stiff, and we are born unable to kneel. Speaking of this, Tengmu reached out and patted his knees while sitting cross-legged. The standard sitting posture in the Rulong group was always cross-legged. Kneeling was not allowed. Because everyone else in this society was kneeling, Extreme Do could not kneel, so the Rulong group could not kneel. This principle was understood by Ikema, Tungmu, and thousands of brothers. However, at this time, Raito said that he wanted the Rulong group to be engaged in some kind of security work. Wasn't this the same as being a dog for the rich and powerful? It was because they didn't want to kneel and be a dog that Extreme Do was exiled from society. If the price of making money was to turn back and be a dog, then it was better not to earn money. Although Tungmu didn't say it explicitly, his expression and tone clearly meant this. After feeling Tungmu's firm will, Raito didn't know what to say for a while. The Rulong group was a place for those who were not accepted by society to stand. Even if they were condemned by everyone, even if they were poor, they had to continue standing until the moment of their death. If even the Rulong group became a dog for the rich and the bureaucrats, then the last trace of benevolence in this country would disappear. Therefore, Tungmu didn't support the Rulong Security Company because he didn't want to earn money. What should I do? For a moment, Raito didn't know how to persuade Tungmu. After all, this man's will was still relatively firm. If only Lioli was here. She was smarter, so she would definitely be able to be smarter. That's right, I can do that. Just as Raito was thinking about how to persuade him, he suddenly thought of the reason why he wasn't smart. In the end, all of Raito's previous actions seemed to be unfathomable and planned, but in reality, they were all built on a full understanding of this world and other people. It was an open book exam. In terms of true wisdom, Raito was currently at the level of wisdom, mortal scraps. At most, he was at the level of a normal person. What should he do now? Naturally, he had to upgrade his wisdom. After all, he had just received a sum of money not long ago, and his wallet was still relatively well off. Therefore, Raito immediately opened the system and entered the familiar attribute upgrade interface. Upgrading from LV1 resourcefulness to LV2 resourcefulness requires 5 million yuan. Are you sure you want to pay? Upgrading from wisdom to wisdom also required 5 million. It didn't feel like it was worth it. Forget it. After spending 5 million to upgrade wisdom on the spot, accompanied by a faint light, Raito's brain felt a lot clearer. How should he describe this feeling? It was as if Raito's brain was filled with paste. Now that the paste was cleared, his thoughts gradually became clearer. Chapter 82. At the end of the day, what Fujiki couldn't accept was that the Rulong group was working as a security guard to protect the corrupt higher-ups and the profiteers who exploited society. But what if the Rulong Security Company wasn't set up to protect them? So that's how it is. Is there such a clever way of speaking? After his wisdom was upgraded, Raito, who now had the LV2, wisdom, excellent passerby level of planning ability, thought for a while and thought of a way to persuade Fujiki. At this time, Fujiki saw Raito closed his eyes and didn't say anything. He thought that his rejection hurt his self-esteem. Young Master Longdo, I can understand that you want to start a new business, but there are some things that you can't rush. The middle-aged man tried to persuade him. By the way, Uncle Fujiki, have you raised pigs before? Just when Fujiki was about to use his experience to talk a few principles to dispel Raito's idea, the latter suddenly said something very strange. Raising pigs? Why would I raise pigs? Fujiki didn't understand for a while, but he still shook his head decisively. Then do you know how to raise pigs? I have a rough idea. It's nothing more than letting the pigs eat and drink until they are white and fat. Finally, the pigs are slaughtered and eaten. Yes, and in addition to letting the pigs eat and drink well, you also have to build a safe pigsty for the pigs and let them slowly fatten up in it. That being said, what does raising pigs have to do with what we are talking about now? Of course, because the Rulong Security Company is like a safe pigsty, and we are the pig farmers. All the dignitaries and rich people who are served by us are the pigs in our pigsty waiting to be slaughtered. When saying this, Raito's face showed a strange smile, as if he was a villain who was planning something bad. Of course, in fact, he was indeed a villain, but this villain didn't take the money of the common people, he took the money of whoever had money. Dignitaries and rich people are the pigs in our pigsty waiting to be slaughtered. Upon hearing this, even Teng Mu, an experienced member of the Jianghu, could not help but widen his eyes. This was because these words did sound a little ridiculous. How could this be possible? But as Raito continued to explain the plan, Fujiki's eyes widened. They were almost like the eyes of an anime girl. According to Raito, after the Rulong Security Company entered the city, some of the elite members of the Rulong Group would secretly form a group called the Second Tokyo Pig Factory to harass the Tokyo dignitaries. Stalking, secretly taking photos, sending threatening letters, bombarding text messages, death threats, splashing paint, scratching cars, and so on. Anyway, as long as it was something that made people feel threatened, they would do it. As long as one had money and power, there were not many who were not afraid of death. Therefore, they would definitely strengthen the security around them, and even the security of their families and companies. And very coincidentally, not long ago, a few large security companies in Tokyo had negative reports. It was so widespread that everyone knew about it, making people uneasy to entrust their safety to them. At this time, the Dragon Security Company appeared quickly like a divine soldier descending from the sky, protecting all the frightened dignitaries. Amidst their happy smiles, the company took away the wealth of the people without shedding a drop of blood. Simply put, it was to ruin the reputation of the competitors, create false panic, take the opportunity to accept business, perfectly complete the mission. At the last step, the pigs were already in the pigsty. This whole set of interlocking strategies was the unruly business war system that the business ghost Masato Tokoyama was particularly good at. It perfectly illustrated his vicious method of not treating his competitors as human beings, let alone his customers as human beings. The next step was to repeatedly kill the pigs and eat their meat. As long as the pigs were in the pigsty, Gao Yuan had millions of methods to scrape off every inch of fat from the pigs. Of course, after doing this a few times, the dignitaries in Tokyo would definitely be suspicious. Therefore, after a period of time, he could also secretly buy several other declining security companies and quietly replace all of them with people from the Rulong Group. In this way, when the rich felt that something was wrong and wanted to go another way, they would find that no matter where they went, they were still in the hands of the Rulong Group. At most, they would go from one pigsty to another pigsty. This whole plan was named Tokyo Pigsty Plan by us. The purpose is not to provide protection for the dignitaries, but to extract the money they plundered from the common people. When talking about it, Raito couldn't help but slam the table, quite a bit of the spirit of the world. Of course, although Raito was speaking eloquently in front of Fujiki, in fact, the plan just now was just a temporary idea. It was true that Gao Yuan had made a complete plan not long ago, but he did not put forward the pigsty theory, nor did he have such a strange plan name as Tokyo Pigsty Plan. At the end of the day, this was just a set of excuses that Long Do deliberately made up with his clever brain in order to justify his actions and turn them into chivalrous heroes. We are not dogs, we are just raising pigs, ready to kill pigs for meat at any time. This is not shameful at all. Is this robbing the rich to help the poor? It is indeed the style of a hero. After listening to Raito's explanation, Fujiki couldn't help but take a deep breath as if there was a warm current surging in his chest. Seeing that Fujiki's vigilance had been lowered a lot, Ryugu quietly walked over and said with a smile, "By the way, do you know how much oil we expect to extract from the pigsty every year?" "How much?" "It should not be too much in the first year." "Oh, that's about." "The current goal is to reach 200 billion in annual output, and it is expected to double in the second year. 2000. Poof. Suddenly, Fujiki couldn't help but jump up. It looked a bit funny. As everyone knew, although the Rulong Group seemed to be prosperous on the surface, the organization was actually very poor. After all, they adhered to the principle of being a group leader, and no matter what, they would not be involved in the most profitable anesthetic business, gambling business, human or organ trafficking, financial fraud, and so on. Therefore, when he heard that he could make such a large amount of money in a relatively chivalrous way, Fujiki's expression was quite interesting. In the end, Raito struck while the iron was hot and asked, "Uncle Fujiki, can you imagine the scene of this room being filled with stacks of money? Furthermore, this is a righteous fortune earned through a righteous act." This. Originally, Fujiki wanted to insist, but there was no other way. The amount of money that Long Do described was simply too much. Therefore, in the evening, the proposal to establish the Rulong Security Company was successfully passed. Chapter 83. That's it. Our Rulong Security Company started to operate today. Isn't that awesome? Yeah. With Gao Yuan around, the business side of things isn't a problem at all. All kinds of procedures are like child's play. Moreover, he doesn't even need to show up. He just needs to rely on his phone. How advanced. Yeah. Sensible also found some foreign security instructors through online channels to train the brothers transferred from Rulong Group into professional security personnel. At the same time, they are also closely monitoring the situation at the police station to ensure that there will be no problems. Yeah. Uncle Fujiki has also said that he will fully support me. The brothers in the Rulong Group are also very happy to receive a generous salary. They are all fighting to sign up for the company. In short, everything is going smoothly. Yeah. However, while all the students were enjoying lunch at Dori No. 1 High School, Kanzaki-colored Glaze was sitting upright on the carpet as he elegantly picked up his chopsticks. Her eating movements were neither fast nor slow, and her demeanor was elegant. However, her eyes never looked at the man sitting opposite her, who was talking animatedly. This strange situation had been like this ever since Raito saw her today. It didn't matter if Raito came to talk to her, or if they sat in the garden and ate together. In short, this young miss almost completely treated Raito as an invisible person. No matter what the other party said, she would just casually respond with two ens. What's going on? Colored Glaze seems to have a problem with me. Was she still angry? Seeing Liu Li's angry look, Long Do thought that she was angry because of what had happened the night before. At that time, because of some misunderstanding, Raito had sent her some ungentlemanly text messages. This was indeed a problem. But that was already the day before yesterday. Why was he still angry until now? Just as Raito was puzzled, the dancing costume standing next to him secretly revealed a happy smile. Stinky hooligan, big idiot, this is great. You've completely angered the young miss. Looks like the young miss won't bother with you anymore, eh? Although Raito thought that Colored Glaze was angry about what happened the night before, Dancing Costume knew that she was angry about what happened yesterday morning. That's right, it was the shocking Tsukimori Yunyang x Raito Kiri, the greatest crime in history that happened yesterday morning. When the eldest miss saw that everyone in the first high BBS forum was discussing the relationship between Yunyang and Raito, her expression was very interesting. From the perspective of Dancing Costume, it was as if something that belonged to her had been snatched away by a woman who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. To put it simply, he was jealous, and he was extremely jealous. Even if Dancing Costume didn't want to admit it, he could see that the eldest miss cared about Raito more or less. Therefore, after a day had passed, the eldest miss's resentment and jealousy clearly didn't disappear at all. It might even continue to ferment. Raito Kiri, this is the price you have to pay for having 1 foot in 2 boats. Accept your punishment, bastard. Looking at the eldest miss's calm expression, but in fact, her face was surging with emotions, Dancing Costume secretly laughed. Perhaps it was because Raito had just gained a wave of wisdom yesterday, his brain finally filled up a little bit. He gradually smelled the sour smell of jealousy. Could it be that the eldest miss is jealous? Is it because I went to school with senior sister Yunyang yesterday morning? So she doesn't want to bother with me now? After understanding this, Raito sighed and said to Colored Glaze, who was drinking tea, Colored Glaze, I like you. Fart. Suddenly, the tea in Colored Glaze's mouth spurted out from her nose. Cough cough. She quickly took the handkerchief from Dancing Costume's hand, wiped the tea in her nose, and said angrily, Are you crazy? Originally, Colored Glaze planned to use a cold face to face Raito to make him back off. But this bastard actually said I like you without batting an eyelid. And he said it in front of Dancing Costume? Straight ball, this wasn't a simple straight ball, it was simply a super invincible straight line explosive tornado ball, the kind that almost made Colored Glaze's face crooked. But Raito was not aware of this, because this was a very normal thing to him. So he smiled indifferently and said, I'm a man, if I like you then say I like you, if I don't like you then say I don't like you. My words are worthy of the heavens, worthy of the earth, and worthy of myself. What's wrong with that? Because his attitude was too matter-of-fact, Colored Glaze didn't know how to respond. After a while, Liu Li sighed and said, I know your intentions, but since you like me, then you shouldn't have done it with senior sister Yun Yang yesterday. Yes, because I also like her, so it's normal to go to school with her. Nani? What? Just when Raito said I also like Yun Yang in Tsukigami in a serious manner, Colored Glaze and Dancing Costume were stunned and made strange questioning sounds. Did I hear it wrong? Just now this kid said in front of Miss that he also likes Yun Yang in Tsukigami. Moreover, it was added immediately after he had said that he liked the young miss. Dancing Costume couldn't help but open her mouth wide, with a look that said, are you fucking drunk? After all, how could there be such a man in this world? Although there were many men who had one foot in two boats, a man who dared to say that he liked another woman in front of the person he liked was simply a monster in history. But compared to Dancing Costume, who was so shocked that her eyeballs almost popped out, Colored Glaze was obviously much calmer. She was stunned for a moment, then asked in a tone that said she didn't know whether to laugh or cry, what is this? Are you announcing to me that you haven't made up your mind, that you haven't made a choice between me and Yun Yang? No, I've already made my choice. Then what is your choice? I want both. You and Yun Yang are members of my harem. As if he didn't care how shocking his words were, Raito said in public without blushing or panting. Indeed, polygamy did exist in this world, and many Nihon officials and nobles did have several wives in secret. But a weirdo like Raito, who dared to directly tell the person he liked that he wanted to marry other wives, was hard to find in the world. Don't you think this is unfair to me? After a few seconds of silence, Colored Glaze asked. Indeed, but my feelings for you are loyal. I think that when you have feelings for multiple women, you no longer have the right to talk about loyalty. But at least I openly expressed my desire to start a harem, and let you have a full understanding of it before that. Compared to those indecisive and deceitful men, I'm much better, right? From this point of view, my feelings are loyal and without a trace of deceit. Even if he was talking about such a shameless thing, Raito's tone was still sonorous and powerful. Chapter 84. From the very beginning, Raito never hid his love for these female leads. No matter if it was Kanzaki Colored Glaze, Tsukujiri Yunyang, or Saito Downia, who was about to transfer over, they were all very important to him. The three of you are my wings. I want to start a harem, and I want the three of you to accept it openly. This is the confession of me, the six-winged angel Raito Kiri. Of course, such an idea that clearly went against the times might not necessarily be accepted by others. No matter if it was Colored Glaze, Yunyang, or Downia, they were all perfect girls in terms of appearance, personality, and family background. It would be the fortune of 300 lifetimes for a normal person to marry even one of them, let alone all three of them. Would the three of them be able to accept Raito's greedy desires? The answer was still unknown. But even so, Raito would continue to work hard and use his own hands to open a path to a harem. Even if none of the three of them were willing to date him because of this, Raito would accept it. He could only blame himself for not being able to do it. No matter how one looked at it, Raito's elementary school-like concept of I want all of them was definitely problematic. But Colored Glaze felt that such a concept of love was very similar to this extreme Dao young master. If he liked something, he would work hard to fight for it. He would never lie to himself or others, even if it seemed a little shameless. After all, Raito was not a person who cared about his reputation. But she still turned her head and said in an emotionless tone, "We're done eating. Hurry up and leave. I still have things to do." "Okay. I won't disturb you." Although he did not know if Colored Glaze could accept his words, Raito felt that it would be better to give her some time to think about it. However, just after Raito left, Colored Glaze picked up her mobile phone and dialed an unfamiliar number. Beep beep. "Oh, it's Miss Colored Glaze. You rarely call me. What's the matter?" "Uncle Suzuki, I have a good friend who owns a company. However, his background is not very clean, so he may be involved in some inspection problems. I hope you can take care of him. So that's how it is. No problem. In the Tokyo circle, my old bones still have some use. Then I'll leave it to you. I'll ask my assistant to send over the company's information in a while. After exchanging a few more pleasantries with the person on the phone, Colored Glaze hung up. But the moment she hung up the phone, she saw Dancing Costume's stunned expression. Others might not know who Lioli was calling, but it was impossible for Dancing Dress to not know. After all, the Uncle Suzuki she mentioned was the current governor of Tokyo. He was an extremely high-ranking official in the Tokyo administrative area and was responsible for all matters in Tokyo. In other words, he was the real leader of the Tokyo area. The power he held was unimaginable to the average citizen. However, just now, Colored Glaze asked this uncle she knew since childhood to take care of. Raito's company? And it was when the latter had just issued a harem declaration? First of all, without a doubt, with the governor of Tokyo looking after it, even if it was just a few words, it would save Raito and the others a lot of trouble. But why did Colored Glaze do this? Wasn't she angry just now? Miss. He already treated you like this, why do you still? He's angry with me, but I still have to do what I have to do. It's better to separate personal feelings from the overall situation. However, although Colored Glaze said he's angry with me on the surface, her emotions were obviously a lot calmer. After all, honesty was the most important thing in getting along with people. She could see that Raito's words were sincere. Even if it was unpleasant to hear, it was what he thought. Compared to secretly having a mistress after getting together with Colored Glaze in the future, or having an unclear relationship with other people outside, Raito obviously thought that it would be better for both parties to be honest with Colored Glaze before they started. Really? I don't know if I should call him smart or an idiot. But if he really wants to take me and Yunyang together, then I'm afraid only a man who has dominated this country can do it. On one side is the next vegetarian king of Kamiyoshi, a girl who is forbidden to marry. On the other side is the precious daughter of the Tsukujiri Consortium, the carefree daughter who has been strictly watched since childhood. To take these two women into the palace at the same time, the difficulty was no less than taking the head of the emperor and using it as a toilet. Therefore, at this moment, Liu Li was looking forward to it even more. She wanted to see if the future Dragon Battle Royal could reach this stage. Under the influence of these various thoughts, the clear day quickly passed, and night once again shrouded the earth. Today was a fairly normal day in Tokyo. Other than a company called Rulong Security Company quietly preparing to go online, everything was so normal. In the dark night, the faint moonlight was like a gauze hanging down, shrouding the backyard of the Rulong Group headquarters in the middle of the night. There was only a small table lamp in Raito's room. Looking in from the outside, it was difficult to see what the person inside was doing. Under the dim light, the young master was wearing a dark long-sleeved trench coat, black gloves, black boots, and a hat on his head that covered his yellow hair. Almost his whole body was wrapped in darkness. In addition, this guy also wore a white jade mask that covered almost half of his face. It looked like a role-playing prop. This made his face faintly discernible, and it was difficult to see his specific features clearly. This white jade mask looked very special. Not only did it cover half of the face, but there was also a small protrusion on the mouth, like a small microphone. In fact, it was really something similar to a small microphone, because it could make a noticeable difference in the sound. Good evening, have you eaten? After putting on the mask, Raito casually said such a sentence to the air. A slightly hoarse and mature voice echoed in the air. It was completely different from Raito's usual voice. Not bad, the 500,000 yuan was worth it. After confirming that this rogue voice-changing mask was effective, Raito nodded slightly. The mask on his face was a new product that he bought from the Karma Mall not long ago. After wearing this mask worth 500,000 yuan, not only could it cover the face, but it could also change the voice, making it impossible for people to recognize who the person was. It could be said that it was a must-have for rogues. Of course, Raito didn't dress up like this for rogues, but to uphold justice. Chapter 85. After tasting the sweetness of blackberry finance not long ago, the dragon head realized that the gangsters who did the dirty work were quite rich. For example, blackberry finance was 6 million. If there were 10 of them, wouldn't it be 60 million? Wouldn't 100 of them be as much as 600 million? Therefore, before the Rulong Security Company was on the right track, Raito planned to use this to make some money. Therefore, with the sense of justice of punishing evil, he prepared to enter the streets at night to see if he could get rid of the evil. It's about time. Let's go. After confirming that he didn't miss anything, Raito turned off the table lamp and jumped out of the window. Jumping over walls was a common occurrence for him. When the cold wind of the night blew on Raito's face, it even brought a feeling of satisfaction. Under the cover of the moonlight, the young man rushed out of the Rulong Group headquarters with extreme speed and sneaked into the streets of Tokyo. Under the night sky, Tokyo was a city that never slept. Neon lights flashed here, and most of the streets were still lit up. But under the lights, there was still an unconcealable evil churning, waiting for the people of the night to save it. Phew. 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 Help, help. When the hour hand of the clock pointed to 2 in the morning, at a remote corner outside a bar, a woman who looked gaudy was panting as she squatted against the wall. Her mouth kept calling for help. Just as the woman, who looked to be in her early 20s, leaned against the corner and shivered. 3 gangsters who looked sloppy and almost had "I'm not a good person" on their forehead walked over with a smile. Hey, what's there to run for? We just want to have some fun with you. We won't do anything to you. Their lips curled up into a wretched arc, and their tone was extremely insulting. It was easy to imagine what would happen later. It was already late at night, and there weren't many people passing by this alley. If this continued, wouldn't the girl fall into the devil's claws? However, just as the leader of the group was about to grab the woman and forcefully pull her into the depths of the alley to have some fun, "Hey, guys, do you have any money?" A hoarse voice suddenly drifted over from the wall above them. "Who is it?" The leader hurriedly looked up at the top of the wall. Under the dim light of the street lamps, a dark figure appeared there. On top of the wall that was more than 2 meters high, a man who was almost completely wrapped in black sat there as if he was watching a joke, looking down at the 4 people below. "You. What the hell was that? Are you acting by dressing up like this? He must have gone to the wrong set. Or are you crazy?" After seeing the uninvited guest's appearance, the leader instinctively cursed. But just at the moment when he just cursed, the man above, Raito, had already jumped down from the wall that was more than 2 meters high and directly stepped on the head of the gangster closest to her. It was needless to say how strong the impact of a person jumping down from a 2-meter-high wall was. The gangster only saw the shadow on his head quickly become bigger, then there was a sharp pain on his forehead, and he immediately lost consciousness. Bastard. Just after Raito took the lead and killed 1 person, another gangster standing next to the leader immediately made his move. He picked up a glass bottle from the garbage next to him and smashed it at Raito's head without hesitation. Just as he was halfway through swinging the bottle in his hand, an iron-like hand grabbed his wrist and forcefully twisted it downward. Catcher. Ah. With the crisp sound of bones, the gangster's wrist was broken on the spot, and he fell to the ground crying while holding his wrist. After seeing Raito kill his 2 underlings in the blink of an eye, the leader couldn't help but take a half-step back, and there was obvious fear in his eyes. For a group of street thugs like them, being able to clearly identify the strength of the other party was actually a very important skill. Otherwise, if they were to bump into an iron plate one day and die, that would be a bit too stupid. Judging from the current situation, they should have hit a metal plate. Moreover, this metal plate was solid. It was fucking hard. So he couldn't help but ask, "Who are you? What is your purpose?" "I am the messenger of justice, the black hero who maintains the order of this city." "Black hero? Maintain the order?" "Yes, now leave all the valuable things on you and your companions, and then take them away." "Wait, you have the nerve to call yourself the messenger of justice, bastard? Black hero? Robber?" At this time, the leader silently ridiculed in his heart, but he quickly took out a very sharp sawtooth military knife from his waist. This sawtooth military knife was a high-end product he bought from the black market at a high price. It was very sharp and full of murderous aura, The kind that ordinary people would immediately pee their pants when they see it. You. However, just as the leader was about to struggle with the weapon, his eyes suddenly widened. Because the moment the leader raised his head, a black pistol was already pointed at his lower body. You took out this knife. What are you going to do? Raito asked with a smile when he pointed the gun at the opponent's vital part. There are hundreds of martial arts, but this is the spear technique. When the opponent is unprepared, attack the penis. You use a weapon, I also use a weapon. You use a knife, I use a gun. This is very fair. You. Look at this military knife, isn't it good? I was just going to take it out to show my filial piety to you, and the money on them is all for you. When the gun was pointed at him, the leader's expression became very flattering, and he quickly and skillfully searched for all the valuable things from the two underlings on the ground. Wallet. Take it away, throw away the useless ID. Watch. Take it away, but don't want the electronic watch, it's not worth much. Phone. Take it away, remove the SM card and throw it in the smelly ditch. Gold and silver ornaments. Take it away, take it all away. In the end, even the sawtooth military knife in his hand was put into a bag, and after respectfully handing it over, the leader said with a bitter smile, that, Mr. Black Hero? Can I go now? Raito weighed the weight of the goods in his hand and said with satisfaction, well, it was a pleasure working with you, get out. Just like this, the messenger of justice and the street thug reached a consensus. The latter carried his companion with a complicated expression and ran away. The messenger of justice took a bag full of valuables and walked toward the woman who was almost hurt. When the woman realized that the hero saved her, she also showed a happy smile and said to him with a smile, that, I'm very grateful. Cut the crap, how much money do you have? Throw it all into the bag. What? After hearing the words that obviously didn't sound like a hero, the expression on the woman's face froze. Chapter 86. Something's wrong with this. Aren't you the hero of justice, Black Hero? Why do you want money from me, the victim? When he saw her expression, Raito asked impatiently, do you think I look like your father? No, you don't. Since I'm not your father, why should I save you for free? It seems. Since I saved you, you should give me some compensation. This is very reasonable, right? This seems to sound quite reasonable. But since she got rid of the fate of being insulted, the woman had nothing to say. She could only obediently throw all the valuable things into the bag. Including cash, jewelry, and even mobile phones, she basically didn't leave anything valuable behind. After taking out a few hundred yen for the woman to take the tram back, Raito quickly disappeared into the darkness, leaving only a righteous figure carrying a bag of money. Not bad, it's quite heavy. After weighing the heavy bag in his hand, the dark hero showed a happy smile. This was a business. It was definitely not the only one Raito did tonight. It was even the simplest one among the hundreds of orders he would do next. After feeling the sweetness of this kind of thing, the messenger of justice, Black Hero, began a crazy day and night money-making journey in the next 5 days. Because the Rulong Security Company was still in preparation, Raito had nothing to do during the day. He usually went to school as usual, and then slept in the classroom. At noon, he went to find colored glaze to eat, and in the afternoon, he went to find Yunyang to talk about books. He was a scumbag trying to capture 2 female protagonists in a love game. But in the evening, the night in Tokyo, Raito's wonderful nightlife began. Under the dark night, the messenger of justice, Black Hero, quickly passed through the streets and alleys of Tokyo, and carried out a crazy search for those who obviously didn't look like good guys. As long as it was a gangster who didn't look like a good guy, whether they were doing bad things or not, Raito would make a move on the spot. After beating someone up, they would take all their belongings. They would not let go of any valuable items. During the day, Raito would roll up all the valuables in gunny sacks and hand them over to Gao Yuan. He would have someone transport them to the black market overseas and sell them. Gao Yuan was also curious as to where Boss had gotten so many watches, accessories, phones, and other miscellaneous gadgets. But he still faithfully found someone to sell all these goods by mail, and all of them were exchanged for clean cash through various channels. It had to be said that Jiao Yuan's ability in financial management was indeed quite excellent. Even if a large number of goods were shipped to the black market abroad to be sold, no one could find out the origin of the goods, let alone find out who the seller was. Just like that, Raito's wallet became richer day by day, and the speed was extremely fast. Phew, it's another day full of riches. When the morning of the 6th day arrived, Raito dragged his tired body and a big sack of messy things back to his room. He then sat down on the ground. Upholding justice, fighting crime, this kind of work was really tiring, but making money was also really making money. For 5 consecutive nights, almost every time the clock rang at 1 o'clock in the morning, Raito would wear the black hero costume and appear in the streets of Tokyo to fight for justice and money. According to incomplete statistics, the number of gangsters that Raito carried out justice during this period of time was in the hundreds. The intercepted goods were also in the hundreds. Logically speaking, this level of large-scale robbery should have caused a large degree of public opinion, but in fact, it did not. First of all, the gangsters that the boss chose were not good people, and the amount of money obtained from them wasn't much. After all, no one would bring hundreds of thousands or millions of items when shopping. At most, they would have some cash in their wallet, some rings, necklaces, cell phones, and other valuables. For those gangsters who often walked by the river, this kind of situation of being robbed and extorted could be said to be a common occurrence. As long as there was no serious injury or death, even they themselves wouldn't take this matter to heart, let alone calling the police. This kind of thing was too common in Tokyo at night, and the police were too lazy to care about them. However, after experiencing Raito's crazy justice enforcement, the number of gangsters strolling in the alleys in the middle of the night had significantly reduced. Perhaps many people also knew that there was such a psychopath who was specifically targeting the unlucky people who were alone. But this had nothing to do with Raito. Anyway, the money in his hands was a real benefit. He now had to think about how to spend the money. After putting a new sack of dropped goods in the corner of the room and preparing to send it to Jiao Yuan to sell, Raito lay on the bed and opened the system interface, ready to spend a long time. After all, after 5 days of farming time, now Raito's personal attribute panel had become like this: name, Raito Kyriage, 16 years old, attributes, Wisdom LV2, Physique LV3, Courage LV2, Insight LV1, Charm LV2, title, Beginner Assassin, obtained after 100 successful sneak attacks, presence reduced by 20% when equipped, equipment, M9 pistol, good, taser stun gun, good, dragon tooth serrated knife, good. Tools, gangster velcro, gangster analysis mirror skills, Furumaki style martial arts, iron bone mastery, copper skin master. Total assets, 31,217,800 yuan. How to describe it? It was a kind of earth-shaking change, right? First of all, because of the large number of sneak attacks, Raito received a new glorious title, Beginner Assassin. This title could reduce presence, which was to make it difficult for others to notice you. It was a quite useful special ability when carrying out some secret operations. Secondly, the equipment on his body was also changed into something quite good under the condition of Uncle Fujiki. For example, the small, light, high accuracy, and 15 rounds of ammunition capacity M9 pistol, and the taser stun gun that could shoot an electric dart to electrocute people. These were all equipment that was difficult for ordinary people to get. As for the last dragon tooth serrated knife, it was a loot that Raito looted when he went out to do justice for the first time. Because of the good quality, he didn't sell it, but kept it for his own use. Of course, other than the rewards from the title and equipment, the biggest reward was naturally the small treasury that was now filled to the brim. It was filled with real money. Chapter 87. Now Raito's total assets were as much as 31,217,800. God, when have I, Raito Kiri, ever seen such a large sum of money in my life? If I use this money to buy candy, How long would it take to finish it? Of course, this money wasn't for nothing. Most of the money was stained with blood and sweat. Excluding the few million that the dragon head had, in these 5 days, his net income was about 20 million. Just like what was said, this money was stained with blood and sweat. To be precise, it was stained with other people's blood and Raito's sweat. Have you seen Tokyo at 4 in the morning? Have you walked through the streets of Tokyo in the morning? Have you ever tried to sneak up behind someone and give them a surprise attack, then quickly raid their wallet? You haven't, so you don't know how hard Raito worked these days. Sigh, let's not talk about it. Just thinking about it makes me want to cry. Let's spend the money first. Looking at the huge sum of money flashing on his status page, Raito's face revealed a mysterious smile. 30 million in total assets wasn't a lot, but it wasn't a small amount either. It depended on how Raito used it. First, I should upgrade all the attributes that haven't been upgraded yet. Immediately, Raito looked at his status bar and looked at the 2 attributes that haven't been upgraded yet. So far, among the 5 attributes of wisdom, physique, courage, insight, and charm, only courage and insight haven't been upgraded yet. The first attribute upgrade only required 5 million yen. It was quite worth it. Moreover, the courage attribute was naturally at level 2. At the beginning, Raito didn't think that courage was useful. It wasn't until that time when he confronted Eternal Empress Amaterasu, and was almost scared to the point of being unable to move, that he finally realized the benefits of having such a bold personality. As for insight, the benefits were even more obvious. It could directly see other people's emotions and actions. It provided obvious help whether it was in daily life or in battle. Therefore, after Raito boldly clicked a few times, the 2 attributes were upgraded at the same time and emitted a golden light. After the upgrade, Raito's attributes became Wisdom LV2, Physique LV3, Courage LV3, Insight LV2, Charm LV2. Without changing any of his attributes through the title, his 5 attributes were already considered to be quite decent and were gradually developing in the direction of a bucket. Although upgrading these 2 attributes cost 10 million yen, compared to the cost of the second upgrade, it was cheap as if it didn't cost money. After all, starting from the second upgrade, the cost of a single upgrade would soar from 5 million to 50 million. This huge amount of money was not something he could afford at the moment. Thus, Ryudo took the remaining 20 million yen and opened the Krypton shop that he hadn't visited in a long time. Although there was a dazzling array of items tempting him, compared to items, Raito still felt that skill books were more practical. Especially after he had tasted the benefits of Ironbone Mastery and Bronze Skin Mastery, he could not wait to buy more and more powerful skills. After browsing through the skill store, Raito first saw 2 particularly practical skills. These 2 skills were Brawler Doesn't Die by Bare Hands and Parkour Master. The former allowed him to turn anything in his hand into a combat tool when he didn't have a weapon. Even a chair could be used as an attack weapon. It could be said to be the essence of the dragon style. The latter could increase his running speed and agility. Even in a very complicated environment, he could still run at full speed. It could be said to be a godly escape tool. These 2 skills combined with the previous passive of Copper Skin and Ironbone should be enough to deal with most combat environments. Even if he encountered a situation like before where professional mercenaries came to cause trouble, Raito would still have the strength to fight. Of course, such practical skills had a very practical price. After all, the price of these 2 skills was 3 million yen respectively. He suddenly lost another 6 million. However, looking at the 2 new skills with 20% proficiency in the skill bar, Raito still felt quite happy. After buying the skills, he casually picked up an ear pick from the side. With a slight movement of his wrist, this weapon, which was not a weapon, was thrown at the wall with the speed and strength of a flying knife. Whoosh! Squeak! Accompanied by a strong wind-breaking sound and a slight creaking sound, the ear-digging spoon with a blunt head and light weight actually pierced through the wall 5 meters away, abruptly getting stuck on top of it. Although the depth of the penetration was not very exaggerated, with the sharpness and weight of the ear pick, the power caused by this throw could be said to be quite terrifying. Good God, is this hooligans don't die by their hands? It really felt like a random pebble could beat someone until they cried out in pain. Looking at the pair of hands that didn't seem special on the surface, but had just made a shocking move. For the first time, Long Do deeply felt how terrifying his potential was. Now, hooligans don't die by their hands only had 20% proficiency. If he continued to research or continue to buy skill books to reach 100%, wouldn't he be able to hurt people with flying flowers and falling leaves? At that time, why would he need pistols, rifles, and sniper rifles? He could take a stone and throw it 1,000 meters away. Maybe it could make a big hole in a person's head. The legendary Internal Force Master was just like that. However, the premise was that there must be so many skill books to buy. After all, money was common, but skill books were not common. This thing was still a scarce resource. However, after buying these 2 skills, Dragonhead still had about 15 million left in his hands, so it was not a problem to buy a few more skill books. But there were too many skills in this skill store, and all kinds of skills were a bit too messy, which really made him a little dizzy. What the hell is this? Let's just see what's on the last page. After continuing to search in the skill store with excitement and speechlessness for a while, Raito couldn't help but pull and directly swipe to the bottom page of the skill store. But at this moment, what appeared in front of his eyes was the most unique blank skill book with no name written on it. What is this? Raito curiously opened the blank skill book, and then he was suddenly energized. Because the description of this blank skill book was, after buying this skill book, you can specify to increase the proficiency of any skill in the skill bar by 20%. Hiss. It's actually a skill book that can level up any skill. This is a little too expensive, you bastard. Just when Raito wanted to cheer, he saw the price of 10 million yen of this skill book, and suddenly felt that he couldn't cheer. Chapter 88. Although skill books could be purchased repeatedly to increase proficiency, it was not something that would appear whenever one wished. According to Raito's previous experience in the item store, the skill books in the skill store were also 1 death, 1 exchange, and there was no telling what kind of items would appear. Therefore, if one wanted to level up a specific skill, it required a lot of luck. If one was unlucky, even if they died 3 to 5 times, they might not be able to get the skill book they wanted. However, this blank skill book was different. It could actually increase the proficiency of any skill. It was simply an omnipotent skill leveling tool. Of course, based on such a convenient foundation, it was much more expensive than normal skill books. One skill book actually cost 10 million. What a robbery. What kind of concept was 10 million? One should know that the 4 practical skills, Iron Bone Mastery, Bronze Skin Mastery, Rogues Don't Die by Bare Hands and Parkour Pro only cost 8 million. In a situation where one was not rich, such an expensive item was not worth buying. After all, there was a high chance that it would fail, and the skill book would also have a high chance of being refreshed. However, Raito hesitated for a moment, and looked at the Furumaki-style martial arts in his skill pane, which only had a 1% proficiency. Unlike the other purchased skills, the ancient shepherd-style martial arts was a skill that had been imparted to Zhongxian orally by Master Sataro. Thus, the starting proficiency of the skill was ridiculously low, making it impossible to use it normally. At the same time, because it was not in the skill store, Raito could not buy the skill book to increase its proficiency. He could only look at it and pretend that it did not exist. However, with the blank skill book, the situation changed. As long as Raito was willing, he could spend 10 million to immediately raise the Furumaki-style martial arts to 21% proficiency, and this level of proficiency could be used in actual combat. If that's the case, I can go to Furumaki's appointment tonight openly, right? Thinking of this, Raito's mind flashed with the image of a playful old man. Today happened to be the 7th day of his appointment with Furumaki Sataro, which was also the day he was going to attend the appointment tonight. To be honest, Raito didn't want to go because he didn't think it was meaningful to go. After all, during this period of time, Raito had not practiced the profound meaning of skill, Tiger Fall, at all. Naturally, it was impossible for him to use it in actual combat. Since he couldn't use it anyway, what was the point of going there to embarrass himself? It would be better for him to be tactful and not show up. However, since he had the blank skill book, Raito could go and meet the old man for a while. This was because his Furumaki-style martial arts had indeed reached a level where it could be used in actual combat. What should I do? This is 10 million. Raito couldn't help but scratch his head. He seemed to be in a dilemma as to whether or not he should directly invest such a large sum of money in Furumaki-style martial arts. Beep beep, beep beep beep. However, at this moment, Raito's phone suddenly vibrated slightly. This was a sign that someone had sent a message. Raito picked up his phone and looked at it. Only then did he realize that the person who was looking for him was Yunyang from Tsukujiri. He looked at the time again. It was only 7 in the morning. Why did Yunyang wake up so early and send him a message? When he opened the message, Raito's expression immediately became a little dumbfounded. Speaking of which, you're going to report your results to the old man of ancient martial arts tonight, right? I'm so excited. If this plot was written in a novel, it would definitely be very interesting. Thinking of this, I couldn't sleep the whole night, P with Q. Before Raito could respond, a second message came. Actually, if you don't mind, can you bring me to the report tonight? I want to see the scene of a martial arts test between master and disciple with my own eyes. Please, 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 *omega ***. After reading these 2 consecutive messages, Raito seemed to see Yunyang nervously holding the phone on the other side, waiting for his reply through the phone. From a certain point of view, Yunyang from Tsukujiri was really a very innocent person. After all, she was very well protected by her family since she was young. The dangers of the world seemed to have nothing to do with her. But even so, Yunyang was too excited. She was like a primary school student who was ready to go hiking. If he had known, he wouldn't have told her the story of the old man Furumaki. Suddenly, Raito sighed slightly. He looked at the message and couldn't help but shake his head. So far, Raito had already made a contract with 2 ladies. The first contract was a 2-year contract with colored glaze, and the second contract was a research contract with Yunyang. According to the content of the previous contract, Raito needed to provide Yunyang with his daily life and some information about the underground world to help her write a more realistic and tense novel plot. Therefore, during this period, Raito often chatted with Yunyang in various places and told her about some of the things that happened around him. Unfortunately, it included the story of him following his father's order to find the Furumaki Ryu master. Raito obviously didn't take this matter too seriously, but Yunyang took it seriously. She was even more nervous than him. I didn't expect Yunyang to be so concerned about this kind of thing. Forget it, I'll take her there tonight. As if he didn't want to disappoint her, Raito typed no problem, let's talk at school on his phone and sent the message back. 2 seconds after sending the message, a very cheerful good yesha was heard. Was quickly sent back. Through the small emoji, Yunyang's cheers seemed to be close to his ears. Okay. There's no turning back now. After putting down the phone, Raito looked up at the familiar ceiling of the room and clicked on the blank skill book option. There was no other way. Since Yunyang wanted to see him compete with the old man Furumaki, then Raito had to increase the proficiency of the Furumaki Ryu-style martial arts no matter what. Otherwise, if he was defeated by the old man in an unsightly posture when the 2 of them fought, and this kind of thing was personally witnessed and recorded in the book by Yunyang, then it would really be a great humiliation to the level of a society's death. As the 10 million disappeared, Raito's Furumaki Ryu-style martial arts also jumped to 21% proficiency. But this wasn't enough. After leveling up the skill, Raito went directly to the door and shouted at the courtyard next to him, "Come in. Here. Second generation master, what are your orders?" Before the voice died away, 3 extreme Dao in black suits rushed in from outside the courtyard not far away. Chapter 89. Near Raito, there were always more than 3 elite members of the Rulon group protecting him. Although Raito had always been suspicious of this group of elites who could not even be discovered when he sneaked out, it was undeniable that this group of extreme Dao members were indeed good at fighting. After seeing the 3 people appear, Raito also pointed at the nearest one and ordered, "You come over and punch me hard." Punch the second King Yang Luo, hard? Yes. Even if he received such a strange order, the black-clothed extreme Dao still chose to obey unconditionally. Judging from this obedience, it was not unreasonable for Fujiki to say that they were the elite members of the Rulong group. They already felt a bit like soldiers. Therefore, the tall and strong black-clothed extreme Dao quickly moved his body and walked in front of Raito. He raised his fists and clenched his iron-like fists, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. In the next second, the black-clothed man's right foot turned slightly, and he suddenly exerted force on the ground. Using his foot as his waist, his belt as his shoulder, and his shoulder as his shoulder, he threw a very standard right straight punch at Raito's face. Obviously, he should have seriously practiced boxing for a long time. After all, the movement of this punch was quite standard. The strength of his whole body was smooth when he swung his arm, and there was even a faint crisp sound. Ah! So that's how it is, I understand now. But the moment the black-clothed man threw a punch, Raito's body almost instinctively made a corresponding movement in sync with him. The young man's feet stepped forward, and his right knee quickly crouched. While his body sank to the right front, his left arm was like a whip, and he heavily bombarded the midline of the black-clothed man's abdomen with a punching posture. Ooah! The moment the punch landed, the black-clothed man only felt as if the air in his lungs had exploded. His breathing stopped on the spot, and his entire body's continuous punch movement also stopped in a strange posture. I can't move. What am I doing? Before the man in black could recover from the stagnation effect brought by this punch, Long Do had quickly circled to the side of his body and took out a dragon-tooth sawtooth saber from somewhere and placed it on the man's neck. From the moment the man in black threw a punch to the moment the knife was placed on his neck, only a second had passed. For a moment, the fear of being killed enveloped Blackrobe's body. He didn't even have the time to feel the pain of his lungs exploding and the suffocating pain. Cold sweat quickly dripped down his forehead. "How are you? Are you all right?" After feeling his fear, Raito also quickly withdrew his sword, reached out and patted the shoulder of the man in black, and asked with concern. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Immediately, the black-clothed man who was punched pressed his hand against his abdomen and took a few deep breaths. Then, he said with admiration, "Second-generation head, you are really amazing. This subordinate is truly impressed." Although the black-clothed man didn't use his full strength when punching, Raito was the same in this aspect. If the two sides really fought, the result would definitely be the black-clothed man being paralyzed by a punch, and then being finished off by the saber. Especially in the eyes of the two extreme Taoists on the side, Raito's dodging and punching just now was really amazing. Almost at the same time the man punched, his body had already completed the dodging movement, and at the same time, he struck first. The most terrifying thing was that Raito's counterattack just now was almost impossible to defend against. This was also one of the three profound skills of the Furumaki sect, the core skill of profound skill of Tiger Fall. The essence of profound skill of Tiger Fall was to use a short distance, small movement to exert force. The moment the enemy attacked, the 1-inch punch would hit the opponent's diaphragm first. If the position, angle, and strength were all suitable, the diaphragm that was hit would produce a transient spasm phenomenon, causing the breathing to stagnate and the body to enter a rigid state. For a short period of time, the opponent would be at his mercy. Judging from the situation when Raito used profound skill of Tiger Fall on someone in actual combat for the first time, his mastery of Furumaki sect martial arts was already quite good. Although the proficiency of this skill was only 21%, this proficiency was already considered a novice, and could be used in actual combat. If one wanted to slowly cultivate to this level under normal circumstances, it would be impossible to do it without a few years of time, except for a natural-born freak like Yuma. Just like this, in the next hour, Raito let the three black-clothed bodyguards act as his helpers. Or to put it more bluntly, he was actually using Tiger Fall to beat the three of them to the ground in turns. Through using this skill over and over again, Raito also quickly grasped the key to this skill. Combined with his current strong physical fitness, it could be used to great effect. Not long ago, after all of his attributes were increased, the benefits of the attribute increase could be said to be immediate. LV3 courage could help Raito remain calm in any situation. Even in an intense battle, he could still remain unbelievably calm. LV2 insight gave him stronger dynamic vision and observation, allowing him to see the opponent's movements more clearly. Combined with profound skill of tiger fall, it was like adding wings to a tiger. If he added the newly acquired skills, as well as the few high-end equipment hidden on his body that he could take out at any time, it could be said that the current Raito was at least 3 to 4 times stronger than a week ago. He had reached the point where he could truly be called the second generation of the Rulone group, Raito Kiri. As time passed by, the 8 o'clock alarm to prepare for school rang as promised. Phew, it's about time to prepare for school. Alright, the 3 of you go and have a good rest. If you feel uncomfortable, report it as a work injury. Yes. Yes. Seeing the second-generation head leisurely walk out, the 3 black-clothed men, who were lying on the ground, responded in a weak tone. It was obvious that they had been taught a little badly. However, just as Raito was about to walk toward the door and get into Narukai Otoni's car as usual, Narukai ran toward him with heavy steps. Second generation. Not good. Early in the morning, Otoni's tone was very serious, as if he had seen something that made him turn pale with fright. When Raito saw his expression, he frowned. What's going on? Is there an enemy attack? It's not an enemy, but there's a very expensive-looking car parked at the entrance of our headquarters, and the owner of the car said that they're waiting for you to go to school together. A very expensive car? Waiting for me to go to school together? What the hell? After hearing Otoni's words, Raito walked out of the door with a stomach full of curiosity. As soon as he stepped out of the door, he saw senior sister Yun Yang sitting in a very special-looking black car and waving at him with a smile. Chapter 90. When Raito saw the car that was usually used to pick up and drop off Yun Yang, he immediately understood what Narukai meant by "it looks expensive." This was a low-key but luxurious black extended luxury car. The body lines were upright, solemn, and magnificent. Every detail was taken into account to the point of amazement. As long as one had a little bit of knowledge about cars, it was not difficult to see that the price of this car was calculated with at least 7 digits, and these 7 digits were in USD. Mr. Name, the person in the car that's my friend. Don't worry about school today. Just pick me up after school in the afternoon. After telling Narukai, Raito did not hesitate to walk to the car parked outside. Seeing Raito walking over, Yun Yang, who was sitting in the back seat, greeted with a smile, "Raito classmate, good morning. Is my appearance here bothering you?" "Not bothering, it's just a bit refreshing." Under Yun Yan's signal, the door of the back seat was opened, and Raito also lowered his body slightly and sat in. Just like how it looked from the outside, the back seat of this extended limousine was quite spacious. It could almost accommodate 4 people playing mahjong inside. Chimpage. After sitting in, the middle-aged man in charge of driving frowned and snorted without leaving a trace. "Uncle Shinagawa, you can drive." "Yes, miss." The middle-aged man nodded respectfully, but before starting the car, he turned his head and stared at Raito as if to convey the meaning of "don't touch Miss." Raito had never seen this middle-aged man in the game. He should be the person responsible for picking up and dropping off Yun Yang. However, Yun Yang was usually well protected by her family and almost never had contact with boys. It was not difficult to understand why this uncle was so wary of Raito. After all, this was the first time in many years that Miss Yun Yang took a boy to school together. And from the happy expression on Miss Yun Yan's face, she seemed to be very close to the boy. After getting in the car, Raito sighed and smiled bitterly. "Yun Yang, you are too, ahem." Before Raito finished speaking, Yun Yang coughed and pointed at the phone. Beep beep, beep beep beep. Suddenly, Raito's phone rang with a text message. He opened the text message from Yun Yang. It said, "Let's talk about anything, but tonight we have to talk on the phone to avoid being discovered by Uncle Shinagawa." At the same time, Yun Yang said with a smile, "Raito, have you read the book Harry Peter and the Stone Ghost Mask I recommended to you last time?" "Yes, it's quite interesting, especially when Voldemort puts on the Stone Ghost Mask and shouts, 'Peter, I don't want to be a human anymore.'" This scene is really epoch-making. Well, are you playing a cop movie here? Raito replied while lowering his head to type a reply. Aren't you a little too excited? Do you need to drive over to pick me up? Are you afraid that I won't take you? So you like that kind of big scene? In fact, my favorite scene in the first book is the scene where the first generation Peter and Voldemort perish together, and Jenny drifts away from the sea with a child. Hihi, I'm not afraid that you won't take me up. I just want to talk to you about some details early, such as how you should pick me up tonight. I don't like tragedies. I don't like to read novels where the main character dies in the end. It's probably because I've died so many times. Should I pick you up tonight? How should I pick you up? Ha ha ha, Raito, you really know how to joke. How can a person die so many times? I'll send you the map of my house later. There's a special route for sneaking out. You just have to pick me up at the end. Just like that, Raito chatted with Yunyang on the surface while chatting with her on the phone. This kind of chatting made Raito's head buzzing. Fortunately, after Yunyang sent him the map, she stopped. Good heavens. I'm just bringing her out to watch a test. Why does it have to be so troublesome to sneak out of the house? Will she think that I'm kidnapping Yunyang? Suddenly, Raito felt like he had accidentally boarded a pirate ship. He originally thought that he could just tell Yunyang some of his true feelings and let her focus on her novel. But he didn't think that this Missy would become more and more addicted to it. She wanted to participate in it more and more. She didn't even hesitate to leave her house to go out with her male classmates at night. To put it simply, Yunyang seemed to be quickly learning bad things. She was already strictly disciplined by her family. She yearned for the outside world. Especially for people like Raito who lived in the underworld, she had an unrealistic romantic fantasy. Therefore, after getting in touch with Raito, Yunyang was like a bird that quietly used a wire to pry open a birdcage. She was in the rebellious phase of young people. Considering Yunyang's beautiful appearance and charm that could cause the downfall of a city, this state was actually very dangerous. It was very easy for her to be deceived by men with bad intentions. Cough cough. But fortunately, the person who took her out at night was me. Which young man in his teens could be as gentlemanly as me? More trustworthy than me? Thinking of this, Raito couldn't help but reach out and tidy up his hair. He seemed to have completely forgotten the shocking harem declaration he made in front of colored glaze not long ago. However, just as Raito and Yunyang's conversation returned to the normal state, the special car was getting closer and closer to Dory First High School. But just when the car came to the last traffic light in the school area and stopped because of the red light, an antique car that was driving towards the school from the side of the road attracted Yunyang's attention. Huh! Isn't that the car of the Saitu family? What? Saitu family? When Longdo heard a familiar name, he quickly looked in the direction of the voice. But when he looked in the direction of the antique car, the car had quickly turned the corner and left. Raito could only see a silver-like color from the back seat. Wait, that's hair. This color of hair. Could it be? In this world, Raito only knew one person who had silver-like hair. That was the young lady of the ancient martial arts family Saitu Downia. At the same time, she was also the third female protagonist in the game Red Album 2, No Survivors. Chapter 91. In Red Photo Album 2, No Survivors, the three female leads had very different appearances, personalities, family backgrounds, and characteristics, so it was easy to distinguish them. The first female lead, Colored Glaze, belonged to the bureaucratic family, and her family had many connections with various government officials. The second female lead, Yunyang, belonged to the capitalist family, and her family had many connections with various business people. The third female lead, Saitu Downia, belonged to the Jianghu family. Her family was basically the type that mingled in the Jianghu. Of course, this didn't mean that Downia was an underground member like Raito. In fact, the Saitu Martial Arts Dojo was an ancient martial arts family that had been passed down for hundreds of years, and could be considered as another form of mingling in the Jianghu. The Saitu Guild Hall was well versed in modern martial arts such as karate, judo, kickboxing, kendo, aikido, and aikido, as well as ancient martial arts such as the art of war, the art of war, the art of war, the art of water, the art of bone, the art of spear, and the art of jujitsu. After hundreds of years of development, the dojo had covered the entire country, and almost everywhere there were martial arts practitioners, there would be a Saitu martial arts dojo. It could be said that it was like a holy land for martial arts practitioners in the country. From this, it could be seen that the Saitu family was a very ancient and traditional family, and its history was even longer than the Kamiyoshi family. Therefore, when the current head of the family secretly married a bear ballerina in the north and gave birth to a white-haired mixed-blood daughter, it was said that the Saitu family experienced an earthquake. For the Saitu family, which had always been famous for its long history and traditions, having a white-haired mixed blood in the family was like having a bear suddenly appear in a nest of Shiba Inu, and the shock was unimaginable. If it wasn't for the fact that Downier's father was the most famous martial arts master of the current generation, and that he was strong enough to suppress the Curry people, she might have been directly thrown to the snowy north to fend for herself. But even if her father was still alive, Downier, who was born in such a family, was naturally not liked since she was young. This matter was not new, and even Yunyang knew about it. Silver white hair. Is that Saitu Downier? Oh right, she seems to be transferring to Dori First High School as well. It should be today. When Raito told Yunyang what he had just seen, she immediately guessed the identity of the young lady in the car. Yunyang would sometimes attend some banquets, and she had met Downier once or twice. She had a deep impression of the cute doll-like child. Yunyang, have you seen Downier? Downier. You call her so intimately. Do you know her? Cough, I've only heard of her name. After being glanced at by Yunyang, Raito quickly shook his head. In fact, Raito didn't know Downier. He was already quite familiar with her. After all, he was tortured by Downier in the game's third quest. If Colored Glaze was a Tsunda main character, Yunyang was a natural healer, and Downier was a naughty little devil. The white-haired loli was definitely a natural talent in teasing people and acting. She could fool people in minutes, and even if they were sold, they would still turn around and help her count the money. As for Downier's personality problem, the idiotic netizens once used the phrase lack of love from a young age, need a beating when you grow up to accurately describe her. And everyone agreed that if it wasn't for Downier's good looks, with her personality, she would have been beaten to death hundreds of times. But it couldn't be helped. In this kind of game, looks were everything. Morals and values followed one's facial features, and it wasn't as simple as a person's problem. Even a pervert like Yongji had a bunch of fanatics. She was really bold and had never died before. However, just as Raito and Yunyang were chatting about the young lady of the Saitu family, the car slowly drove into the school area of Dori First High School. Because the main street was a pedestrian street, vehicles were not allowed to enter. All the vehicles that picked up students could only stop here. When the two of them got out of the car, they happened to see a little beauty, who looked like she was carved out of jade, walk out of the antique classic car that was not far away. Although she was wearing the same uniform as all the students here, no matter what kind of crowd, Saitu Downier was definitely the most eye-catching one. The premise was that her petite body wasn't completely covered by the crowd. As a mixed breed of hairy bear and Shiba Inu, Downier's skin was so white that it was almost transparent. Her silky silver hair was tied into a cute twin ponytail with a ribbon behind her back. It naturally fell behind her slender waist. Her small and regular facial features, coupled with her emerald eyes, added a kitten-like sharpness and unapproachable feeling to this petite young miss. Overall, if the eldest daughter of the Saitu family didn't open her mouth, she would look like a small and exquisite porcelain doll. Unfortunately, she had a mouth that could speak. As Downier stepped out of the car door, the bodyguard in the car quickly poked his head out and said, "Young lady, remember to press the emergency button immediately if there's anything. We will rush in to protect you at any time." You've said this for the third time today. Do you think I'm the same as you, a pig that has to memorize the words emergency button? Hearing this, Downier stopped for a moment, then turned her head and replied in her clear and sweet voice like a lark. Right, it's a pity that she has a mouth that can speak. If only she was stuffed with something such as a mouthball or something. If it was a normal person, it would be hard to imagine that such a cute little girl like a carved jade would speak such vulgar words. But the bodyguard in the car just nodded as if he was used to it. Well, the sharp-tongued lowly was indeed worthy of her reputation. Unless she was in disguise, she would always be sharp-tongued. The vulgar words just now happened to be heard by Raito and Yunyang, who were walking over here. The former immediately showed a tacit expression. However, Yunyang, who heard Downia for the first time, didn't have such a natural expression. Did I hear it wrong? Why would Downia say that? Probably because she didn't wake up early in the morning, so she's in a bad mood. It's possible. I chatted with her for a while at a banquet before. At that time, she wasn't like this. She was obviously a very polite child. Just as Yunyang recalled the situation when she chatted with Downia at that time, the girl with white hair and double ponytails who just said vulgar words seemed to have noticed Yunyang and Raito behind. The moment she saw Yunyang, Downia first frowned slightly, and then the muscles on her face quickly twisted, and she immediately put on a calm and elegant, fake smile of a young lady. Chapter 92. In the Great Motherland, there is an art called face changing. It is said that an expert can change his face in 0.5 seconds. Although everyone knows that Downia can't change her face, her speed of changing her face at this time is not slower than a professional face-changing actor. Oh, isn't this Yunyang? Guyan, it's really a bright morning. After changing into the Big Miss face, Downia walked with a calm smile, elegantly walked in front of Downia, and nodded slightly to her. The first rule of the Big Miss: use honorifics when talking, even if it's a little redundant, don't care. The second rule of the Eldest Miss: when you speak, you have to lengthen your sentences and slow down your pace to create a steady and elegant image. The third rule of the Big Miss: when talking, you must be dignified and quiet, virtuous and elegant, don't look sideways, face natural, back straight, hands in front of the body. If only from the perspective of the assessment, Downia's Big Miss style at this time can be said to be quite standard. But after hearing the vulgar words of this Big Miss Saitu before, no matter who it is, they will feel that at this time she is very fake. From a street shrew to an elegant Big Miss, Downia really changed too fast. It's like after getting on a car, the car sped up to 200 kilometers per hour. So Yunyang, who saw all this with her own eyes, was also shocked by her. She could only nod and ask as calmly as possible, Downia-san, long time no see, are you coming to school today? Yes, I heard that Dori First High School has a simple spirit, so I asked my father to let me transfer here. I hope I didn't cause any trouble to you. Speaking of this, Downia bowed slightly again. The smile and expression on her face were always very gentle. But when hearing her pure nonsense, Raito's mouth couldn't help but twitch. What did she mean by asking her father to transfer schools because she heard that the school was simple and honest, and that there were many talents here? It was clearly because she had beaten up a few hooligans in her original school that she had no choice but to transfer schools, okay? According to Raito's understanding in the game, the reason for Downia's transfer was simple. She had originally studied in a private aristocratic academy. That's right. It was the kind that specialized in nurturing aristocratic young ladies. Not long ago, when Downia and her friends went out shopping, they met a few hooligans. Those hooligans flirted with them, so Downia took action. That beating made those hooligans kneel on the ground and kowtow to beg for mercy. It was the kind of beating that was almost stuffed into an urn. However, even though she enjoyed the beating, the school found out about her violent behavior, and Downia was criticized and punished. Principal, I didn't do anything wrong. Why are you punishing me? Saito classmate, our White Lotus Women's Academy aims to cultivate virtuous girls. How can there be virtuous girls who beat up others on the street? Then a virtuous lady deserves to be taken advantage of. She can't fight back even if she is insulted. If someone is rude, then you can just turn around and leave. Why bother with those hooligans? F***CKU. What? Saito classmate, you just said. I said F***CKU. If being a virtuous lady means I have to swallow my anger, then I don't want to be a virtuous lady. Boom. At the end of the legend, Downier smashed the table in front of the principal with one punch, scaring the old principal to the point that he lost control of his bladder. Since she had done such an outrageous thing, she definitely couldn't stay in this White Lotus Women's Academy anymore. This was also the reason why Downier transferred to this first high school. At this moment, while she was pretending to be a virtuous young lady with Yunyang, Downier was actually thinking this in her heart. So annoying. I just don't want to meet someone I know. Although Yunyang isn't bad, I feel that it's tiring to be with this kind of virtuous young lady. Looking at Yunyang, who was completely different from her, 100% pure and without any pretense, Downier felt very puzzled. She originally thought that she could escape from that virtuous young lady hell. Who knew that she would meet such a virtuous young lady after transferring? That's too bad. But when she finally noticed Raito at the side, Downier finally curled her lips. Wait, who is this kid? Why is he going to school with Yunyang? Could it be that he was her servant? But what the hell is this blonde? Super tasteless. Although he's a bit handsome, I feel like there's something wrong with his head. Downier secretly looked at Raito and immediately defined him as a super tasteless idiot handsome guy. But on the surface, she still politely smiled at Raito and said, "Hello, I'm Saitu Downier. Nice to meet you." When he saw the faint contempt in Downier's eyes, Raito grinned. "I'm Raito Kiri, Dori First High School and the worst student in Tokyo. Nice to meet you." It had to be said that Raito's self-introduction was very simple and very detailed. "Raito Kiri? Isn't that the extreme Dao young master? Is it him?" Although Downier had been studying in a boarding school in the suburbs of Tokyo, she should have heard of this name. After all, whether it was on the internet or in other people's conversations, the rumors related to this extreme Dao young master were always very impressive. But because the rumors were somewhat distorted, Downier always thought that Raito was the kind of person who was 8 feet tall, 8 feet waist, fists bigger than a pot, and had a scar like the Big Dipper on his chest and a chivalrous traveler tattoo on his back. She didn't expect that the real person was so much more normal than the rumors. He looked like a normal person. It was really disappointing. After secretly disappointed with Raito's overly normal behavior, Downier pretended to be a young lady and walked with Yunyang to the school gate. It had to be said that at this time, the scene of the two beauties walking together was like a painting. Yunyang was tall, her brows were soft, and her brown hair was tied into a single ponytail. She gave people the feeling of a gentle big sister. Downier was petite, her facial features were delicate, and her silver-white hair was tied into 2 ponytails behind her. She gave people the feeling of a cute little sister. From various angles, the two beauties formed a sharp contrast. It could be said that they each had their own characteristics. Such a beautiful scene, the surrounding students naturally couldn't help but look over, but after a glance, most of them quickly turned around and didn't dare to look again. The culprit that caused this situation was naturally Raito Kiri walking behind Yunyang and Downier. The culprit, Raito Kiri. It was a really good title. Raito liked it when people called him that. But at this time, his attention was actually all on Downier's exaggerated and bizarre attributes. Why exaggerated and bizarre to describe it? Because Downier's attributes were like this name, Saitu Downier age, 15 years old attributes, Wisdom LV1, Vitality LV4, Courage LV3, Insight LV1, Charm LV2. That's right, Downier's vitality actually reached the level of LV4, International Warrior. Because this little lowly had an extremely rare superhuman physique, or Supergirl physique. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.